Hey there, folks. Two things for the recording of this episode that we wanted to just put right on the top here. First off, Thomas had a small audio issue where it ended up recording out of a different microphone than intended, so we've done our best to repair that quality, of course, but it's a little bit downgraded from, kind of the usual thing. Sorry about that on this one. Next up is the sort of general warning for this episode. Obviously, gambling is featured throughout, as well as a suicide attempt or a path towards suicide. So just want to put that warning out there at the very top of this episode. Consider skipping that chapter with that character if you want to avoid any kind of discussion surrounding those topics. A word to the wise. We are an explicit podcast tackling content with adult themes as well as entering spoiler territory if you aren't caught up with us. This week, that would be through chapter 53. Through 53. Hey there, this is Cross.
I'm PJ.
And I'm Ben.
Hey, I'm Aaron.
I'm Thomas.
And we are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking. You should think of us as your intoxicating weekly book club.
Pew, 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 pew.
I very nearly introduced myself again, and I was going to see if everyone would go around the horn, reintroducing themselves, but...
Around the
Next
horn.
time, baby.
And I'm PJ.
Yeah.
And I'm PJ.
And I'm PJ.
PJ's currently wearing a short king shirt, which is very offensive.
To me.
Because
Although I know it
he's
is
not a
ironic.
short king.
I know some of the
Stolen
lore
valor.
behind it, and so I will allow it. But as the reigning short king of this podcast, you're on watch.
Stolen valor.
Noted.
Stolen.
If we cut PJ in half, he could be two short kings.
Then yeah. I'm going to get a tall lad shirt, I guess, and then we'll balance out.
There you go. Tall drink of water.
Perfectly. That will work out perfectly. So today, of course, is our 7th episode. We're going to be talking about chapters 44 through 53. But before we go too much further, PJ, tell us about that featured cocktail.
I made a cocktail that I have, with the help of you lovely people, I think specifically Thomas. It is named the Cuspenian Butterfly. It is 2 ounces of gin, 1 ounce of passion fruit puree, half an ounce of lime juice, 3 dashes of Angostura bitters, and it is all shaken and topped with tonic water. The picture that I have to go with it is in a very petite, dainty glass, so I also have a little mini glass on the side. Ultimately, I think I need to do some editing for it. I don't think I needed the lime juice. The passion fruit already gives some acid, and I think it kind of needs a little bit more sweetness just to round it out. But overall, it's nice and refreshing and a little bit tropical and effervescent. It's nice for our boy Corey.
Cuspenian Butterfly.
Mm-hmm. Anyone
Looks
else
tasty.
have
Looks-
drinking?
I'm on that water grind once again. It's deep in allergy season, so I am constantly medicated, and so do not want to throw any alcohol into the mix.
What kind of medication?
All of it. If I don't
Fair
see
enough.
Hat Man, then I might die.
I'm following Thomas's lead. I'm drinking some throat coat tea because I have a cough.
Are you going to say it or you want me to?
What?
No. No? Okay.
Throat coat?
My
That sounds
joke.
like
Yeah.
I had an off-air joke. It was dirty, though.
And is not the
do it.
only
it was
one
untoward.
coating their throat this week.
No, Andon lost his throat coat this week.
That's what I said. He's not the only one coating his throat.
It's a sex joke, guys.
Yeah.
Do you want me to explain it?
Yeah,
No.
please.
No, I think
in
I'm-
detail.
Actually, you know what? Graphic detail.
What are you drinking, Ben?
Ben, what are you having?
I have a Tumbleroot brewery / distillery Moscow Mule. I found it in Aaron's fridge, We don't know where it came from.
I have a drawer in my fridge where I just put things that people leave at my house.
I thought this is a brewery out of Santa Fe, New Mexico, which I enjoy. I love that place. And so
It's like the Taj Mahal's on the back too. No, Moscow. I see.
Who else enjoys Santa Fe?
Mule.
Thomas?
No,
Christian
Hank.
Bale in Newsies.
Great.
Nice.
I
Throw way
absolutely
back.
adore that fun fact.
Anyway, it's not bad. Tastes kind of like a Moscow Mule in a can.
But probably flatter. They always taste flat in the can to me.
It's got like a little too much bite, probably. I don't know. It's a little weird.
Is it sugary?
Yeah, kind of.
Cross.
Well, I ran in and threw together a cocktail. I couldn't even perfectly tell you what is in this glass in ratios, but what I do know is that it is a drink composed of a little bit of gin, a little bit of vodka, a dash of Campari, a little bit of Cointreau, grenadine, shaken with lemon juice.
So
It's like a Long Island.
It's delicious.
I
I
was
don't know
gonna
what
say-
ratio I did. It's incredible.
what? This is probably outdated. What do we now call suicides?
Gee.
The drink.
It's a fair point.
You know when you'd go into Quick Trip or your gas station
Mhm.
and you'd get a little bit of everything? We used to call those a suicide.
Yeah, that's what I would call them too.
I heard that there was a change in term.
I can't think of
They sent
I
an
heard
update.
this.
a tornado.
I've heard this.
I think on New Girl they talked about it in one of the episodes, but I don't remember what they say.
Oh, really? I'm sorry. I grew up in the 90s.
That's true.
Right. Graveyard is the new name.
Oh, I
Hmm.
didn't know that.
Graveyard.
I don't like it nearly
You
as
sure?
much. I think these kids need to go back to Brandon College. Figure this out.
Well, I no longer do it anyways, so
Right.
I've
right.
grown out of it.
I knew that there was something there. Tastes good. I also have tea accompanying that, of course, as always a backup beverage. So
You guys need to get on your tea game.
yeah, no joke.
I'm not a
Deal
big tea fan.
I'm an American is the issue.
Oh my god.
I'm more of a coffee girl, but this is necessary.
We fought a
Yeah.
war over this shit.
We did, and we won.
We fought a
What?
war to keep the tea without being taxed. We wanted the tea.
It's true.
Why'd they throw it in
We
the
wanted
ocean
tea, we
then?
didn't like the tax.
Yeah.
Have any of you seen Hamilton?
Yes,
No.
I did. Okay, so before we talk about the chapters too far, PJ, Ben, Aaron, how'd you feel about this week's reading? What'd you
It
think?
was explosive.
God damn it.
Surprising.
I'm walking off. I've had enough.
brutal.
Already ruined it. I just like that our favorite main character is back in action.
You know the Andy Dwyer meme? That's the face I made when Barrow came back.
Isn't that like an exciting voice?
No, it was like a surprised,
But he's kind of excited.
excited surprise. I was excited for PJ.
Well, I knew Barrow was coming back because I'm the smartest man alive, so I wasn't very surprised.
All right,
Yeah.
Billy Madison, relax a little bit.
Otherwise, yeah, I was very surprised by the happenings this week. The death. I was aghast. I was shocked. Gooped.
There was this moment where I remember Thomas and I were picking kind of highlight moments, and it's like, do we put this in this week or do we put it in like as a cliffhanger? And we definitely sat on this one, I think the longest of any decision that we decided to make. And we're like, it all happened so fast. You don't really get a sense of things. It could have been a good cliffhanger, but it doesn't leave like the sort of question of what's going to happen next quite the same. So we settled to kick off the week with a bang, as it were. And there's everyone's shaking their heads for the record, for everyone listening at home.
We're in
Everyone's upset at the jokes. Cool. All right. So with that, let's get into chapter 44, The Man in the Middle. We open on a dark night at the docks in Port Massey under the watchful gaze of the Iron Eye Bridge. We followed the perspective of Willem Reams, longtime foreman of Boss Cromner and his crew, getting offed for taking a little off the top. Of course, we know that he survives, but I really appreciate this sort of character and perspective change that we get here, looking at the operation and the thought process difference between these criminals. Not like we couldn't have made the assumptions based on the stereotypes associated, but it's cool.
Yes.
Mhm.
Dark and I see a heavy fog
Over the bay.
mood.
Some Dick Tracy shit.
I was definitely expecting Boss Cromner to be a little bit more present throughout the story going forward, but quick burn. That's fine.
So
He's just in jail. Who's to say jail's the end?
That's fair.
That's later, though.
does the end of this chapter where he jumps off the boat?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, did that happen in the next chapter?
No, it's all in one chapter, and it all happens pretty quick, and it gives us, so from entering the chapter, we hear about the first delivery going well, and then by the end of the chapter, we're on the last delivery of the Jade, and it kind of progresses just with kind of the thought process and kind of what's happening. One of the moments, of course, is a little quote here. Reams shook his head. Neither of the prior 3 shipments had been underweight. In fact, both had been over 30 kilos. When Reams brought this up, the boatman had shrugged and said, "We give more for the man in the middle to share." And I think that this poses kind of a multifaceted question, or like a multi-angled question of, is this something that the Kekanese actually do? Is this something that Hilo did against Boss Cromner? Is this Boss Cromner setting him up? And I'm curious as to what you all think on sort of that side of things.
I kind of took it as face value. Like, oh, they know that the middleman's going to skim anyways, so they always add a little more.
I feel like it might be a setup to sow some discord. That's kind of the idea behind this in the first place, to get them this Jade and have them start fighting each other over it. So it seems like a pretty good idea. Or maybe just Hilo, he tips his Uber Eats drivers really well in this case.
I think if it was face value and intentional, they'd go like 26 kilos and not even mention it. And just like let them kind of do that on their own. But a whole like 20% overweight is, for me it screamed setup, but I don't know yet.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know that this is something that we necessarily have the strictest of answers on either. So it's more of like could this be a Hilo game? Could this have been a Boss Cromner setting him up to test him, per Hilo's ask? There are a lot of different ways I think to read this.
I don't see Hilo like scheming with Boss Cromner though.
No,
not suggesting that they're working closer together.
Yeah.
More that Boss Cromner is paranoid about Willem.
I have a question that probably isn't even worth parsing, but the Kekanese, and No Pete specifically, are supplying the Jade, right? So how is Boss Cromner possibly inflating the number?
I'm not suggesting that he's inflating the number. I'm suggesting that he's paranoid that he's skimming anyway.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
so it's paranoia without the number actually being
existing,
right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then it's just actually okay.
Yeah, but he actually is given something on the Kekanese side. So,
but I like what Ben said. That makes sense. Like the whole point of all this is to sow discord, and we see towards the end of this chapter and the end of this week's chapters that they are starting to kill each other off. So it's working.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I read.
Cool. All right.
I
think it's a fun thing to ponder. Go ahead.
Before you get into the meat of this chapter, I wanted to shout out what the waterway is called, because I think it's awesome, unless you had that.
I don't.
So it's called the Silver Run officially, which is pretty cool by itself. But then the Vice Canal, love that. Just a cool name for a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially for like a smuggler, like it's a la Smuggler's Cove or something similar. It just has that sort of innate beef vibe about it.
Mm-hmm.
Back alley deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally like it. For me, this is a pretty straightforward chapter. There's this moment where a character is called Moth, and it reminded me immediately. We have an issue with the number of Tims and friends that we have, and so we refer to our Tim as Moth as well. And it was just this funny moment of, oh my god, what is this?
Why is Tim Moth?
Because we have too many Tims.
He's Mothy.
Yeah,
Timothy has moth in it.
Yeah, he chose it himself. Yeah.
Did he choose it himself?
Be called Moth. He did.
Okay.
He was wearing his Manchester Orchestra butterfly shirt, and I think that's where he looked down and went, Moth. And that was, his name in that room that night because there were too many Tims. So
I'm
since
glad that came to light because I felt bad for having him in my phone as Moth for so long. If he didn't like it.
For the record, for anyone listening at home, the Tim that we are talking about is our producer, Tim, as well. So this is Tim, the web guy, who does all of our stuff. So
a moth that does webs. Ooh.
Ooh. It's all coming together. So there is this question, of course, of Reem's survival, which is really exciting. I mean, all of this all happens so fast. There's this quick flash of violence as he's approached and then shot at, has to dive into the river to avoid the bullets from Cromner's other thug. There's this question of, who turned in who or where did this come from? Of course, we already kind of talked about that, but we kind of know the meat of where some of this goes. But do we think that Reems continues to be a character throughout? Is he replacing or filling in somewhere? What do we think about his dive and narrowly avoided assassination attempt?
I feel like he'll pop back up.
Don't we know that
he's
he pops
going
back up?
to smuggle himself to KCON, and then he's going to team up with Barrow, and they're going to ignite the new Jade, or the new Green, and really legitimize themselves as...
Don't we find out in one of the chapters that he's
I don't think
teamed
so.
up with somebody?
I think later there's a little bit that he's made it to a different group, but I'm thinking more long term. But we can also talk about it then for the most part. I mean, that's
yes.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be back. Sounds like he might actually be the guy in Espinia leading the cruise now, or trying to take it over at least. I feel like he might be our main kind of viewpoint into that world.
Might become the end boss of the cruise.
I think like he's going to be our viewing glass into the crew side of the story.
POV.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, this is a pretty quick chapter. A lot of these are just kind of rapidly paced. So with that, let's go into 45.
Do we have to? Is my question.
we gotta try. You did text me angry when I said that this was a crazy week.
I have to jump in. I am on cold medicine, but the chapter 44, Man in the Middle, I started singing, I'm looking at the man in the mirror, but middle. And then you said A Promise in the Park, and I immediately, Pat Benatar, Promises in the dark. Anyways, I'm having a internal party over here. Thought you guys would want to join me.
But it's my favorite Michael Jackson song.
And now
I appreciate the invite. Match. Unfortunately, I will have to decline.
Hey, Pat Benatar, she's pretty cool. No comment on Michael Jackson. Continue.
Chapter 45, A Promise in the Park. We open with a window into the domestic and clan life of the leading family of No Peak. Wen ruminates on her annoyance with Hilo of late before bringing the children to the park for a fun picnic out. The Grand Duchess arrives to pick up Wen and the kids, and though she at first believes it to be Hilo, she realizes that her brother Ken is behind the wheel moments before it explodes. Thinking fast, Wen guides the children to the safety of a nearby lantern man Taylor to await extraction from this suddenly dire situation. Hilo arrives and orders his family taken home, but not before Wen extracts a promise of vengeance from him. So, not necessarily the promise I thought we were getting in the park, but that's showbiz.
Showbiz.
And I feel,
not great.
The Peloton guy, I feel like him right now. I don't want to do this. I don't really want to talk about it that much at all.
The Peloton guy?
Yeah, there's just a meme. It doesn't matter. Anyway.
I don't understand that reference.
I didn't get it. You're getting different memes than we are.
That's fine.
Just, age range wise.
The chapter opens up with Wen. It opens with this exact quote. Wen was annoyed with her husband. And then we get, the reason behind her annoyance, and also learn that she wants to go back to work and all that stuff. So, based on that initial setup, how did you guys think this chapter was going to go?
I mean, I didn't know where it was going, but I definitely didn't think it was going to end up with make Ken in 1,000 pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even when the car exploded, I was like, did he get up his strength?
Or something? Yeah. Can he steal out of that? I did have that specific thought.
He would have had to have known. I mean, he blew up before he even knew it happened.
Right. Tough.
Yeah, I don't think I was like paying attention enough to think it. It didn't seem like something was foreboding. It was just like, oh, we're going to the park. Okay, whatever. Oh,
yeah. I thought it was like a quick make when
with the kids chapter.
Thinks that, or she's meeting an informant or something like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I didn't think about it too deeply until Make Ken was already exploded. So.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be much more wholesome, like mending things and easing Wen's mind from Hilo, who surprised them at the park.
I'll be more present.
Yeah.
Things are calming down. Nope. I did think, Wen, for the most part, seems to be very understanding, and even here she's very understanding of Hilo's role as pillar and how that means the plan has to come first, and she gets it, and she's up with it, and it's no big deal. But it is annoying, and that reminded me of, I'm not going to spoil it, but a relationship in the Invincible comic that has a very similar dynamic, where both parties are understanding of the situation of being superheroes and what that entails. However, it's still, some of those little details, those little pesky life, world-saving missions, they get on the nerves from time to time. Anyway, that was just for me. What did we got?
No, I'm with that to some degree. I just want to, at the very least, consent, because I think that is one of those things where, like, as power or influence escalates, it's just as like we have the same human tendencies regardless. Mm-hmm. The same things continue to annoy us despite either power dynamic or just real world issues. I don't know.
I think kids bring in a lot of extra stress too. None of us have kids, but
yeah, true.
It seems like friends with more kids have a lot more problems with their spouses.
Fuck them kids.
Especially now, there's 3 kids. One of them's all agitated. The other 2 are getting old enough to
it's
fight.
It's just less sleep, less energy, more stress.
Well,
Wen can't do it all.
That's why she has her brothers, or had. And it leads us to a nice little breakfast conversation. A nice little breakfast scene, which I thought was nice. A nice little look, a little window into life in No Peak. And we get Uncle Ken, Uncle Tar, very different in how they handle things. And I just like, Ken spoiling the babies, giving them treats, teaching them little things. And then Tar with his absolutely unhinged lesson about why brothers shouldn't fight.
This came before the explosion, right? We should have known something was going to happen. You can't have a cute moment about relying on your brother and then have them both survive.
Wow. You're right.
Yeah.
You've let the Pierce Brown trauma fade from your minds, and you haven't
I need to get that. I need to be more suspicious.
I have a note for Tar, and it's that toddlers aren't really supposed to have grapes anyway. And so putting grapes into a toddler's mouth and then clamping it shut to reenact putting Jade into somebody, maybe not the best idea.
Pretty wild.
Are toddlers
I wouldn't let them babysit my children.
No, Ken maybe.
Like, why are we even telling them that story?
Yeah, why do they even know anything
and
about
Nico heard it already.
The story?
You killed him.
Quite concerning. How old is Nico at this point? Like 4?
I think so.
Like you shouldn't know that his family buries people alive.
Look.
He's going to get an inkling of what happened to his mom, I think.
He should know about action figures and monster trucks, I feel like.
Yeah. And Wen's just like, listen to your...
Or dolls or whatever.
There can be good guys, bad guys, but not murdering people alive, burying them alive.
It's a little dark.
Murdering them alive.
Murdered
Hate it when I
alive.
get murdered alive.
Isn't isn't everyone murdered until they're unalive?
Can you
Drink
murder
from
a
my
dead
brain.
person?
No,
All
it's
right.
taking life. But anyway,
What do you guys think about Gwen wanting to go back to work?
Not surprised.
Well,
Before
she wants to go back to work and go back to work.
she deserves it.
Like, she needs to get to her fake job so that she can keep helping the clan.
She's apparently got a real fake job.
That's why she
I
wants to
have
go
that
back
in
to
my
work
notes when we get there.
so that she can.
This is hard.
Right. But she can't, like, aid the clan as well if she didn't have a excuse to, like, go places.
Yeah. But that pretty much brings us to the explosion, which we touched on pretty extensively already, I feel like. And then Wen's reaction to that, which was so gutting and like so just a lot going on there for me.
It was wild that she couldn't even she was so worried about her children, couldn't even really react
Mhm.
or like grieve her brother or
Until she saw Hilo.
yeah. That's pretty wild to think about.
Yeah,
Keeping all those feelings in and like not even engaging in them. How rough
her
that must have
ability to
been.
be rational was really impressive.
It was.
I kind of felt like this whole, like, promise me thing was a little, I don't know, like, she should know that, of course, Hilo's gonna do the whole Hilo vengeance thing.
Mhm.
I think she was just like, yeah. You guys are going to say the quote, but I feel like that quote is important just because she's like searching for something in particular and she finds like some reassurance out of that, I think, even though she knows that Hilo's going to kill somebody over this.
Kill lots of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like she
think it's
needed to see it to feel it.
specifically because he comes in and he looks scared for the first time, I think, is how she phrases it. And that is what makes her need that promise more than anything else. Like, it's not about, like, the kids and I are going to be okay, is kind of how I took it. Get the fucker who did this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think there's also something that comes up a little bit later in the section. The hot-headed horn that Hilo was, that perception has kind of faded in the last 6 years. So this is requesting him to come back to form, I think, a little
Yeah, like
bit.
giving him permission to give in to that.
And giving him, I saw it as like her giving him support in doing that. And like knowing that he would do it anyway, or assuming he would do it anyway, but like saying, I'm behind you in this in
I like
whatever way
that.
she can.
Yeah, that makes
Good
sense.
read.
Yeah, and then I just want to close it out with a quote if there's nothing else anyone has to chew on. Okay. So it's when she's extracting that promise from Hilo. She searched his face and found what she needed, the black danger in his eyes, the shock and fear that had been there darkening into the promise of violence.
Hilo about to fuck shit up.
Black danger
Mm-hmm.
is
Like a shark.
Yeah.
Or like a snake.
like a doll's eyes.
And that's creepy now, PJ.
Like a what?
yeah, you shifted it entirely.
I mean,
A
that's
doll's
from
eyes.
Jaws.
This isn't Coraline.
Talking about the shark's eyes.
I
Sorry.
won't watch Coraline because the other mother terrifies me. I will not watch
You
it.
don't like the buttons?
No, it's too scary. And the cat scares me too.
Sounds like you have watched it.
I haven't.
Night
I've
of the
seen,
Living
like,
Dummies.
trailers.
You ever read Night of the Living Dummies?
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps. That's good shit. I was really into Night of the Living Dummies.
I was
Some of those were, like,
terrified by the Left Behind books. That's what I was reading.
That is, I mean, depending on the time frame when you're reading them, if you're comparing Goosebumps
Is that the
to
weird
Left
Christian
Behind,
stuff?
I get it. Christian apocalypse stuff, yeah.
No. I
Don't want to get left behind, Ben.
never read that stuff. I was not a weird Christian.
You were a weird
Got him.
Catholic.
Got him. Ken's dead.
Yep.
It's so sad. I just wanted to throw in that, like, at the end of this, and obviously we have another death coming up in the next chapter, comparing the two sort of grief cycles, I think, is important in the way that they immediately react to something versus the way that they handle it. And like Thomas had highlighted with Wen, sort of the immediate protective instinct of the children, despite losing one of her two lifelong champions, is huge, I think.
Yeah. Wish I could say more. I'm just,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but like this just really hit me super hard this time. My guy Ken, big fan. He was starting to really blossom this book. I knew this happened, obviously, but I just still got me good.
Were you very sad about it, Aaron?
Was I sad?
Yeah.
No.
I wasn't really either.
Because you guys didn't see the vision of.
I wasn't super
Ken,
attached
Shay
to
shipping.
Ken or Tar. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm wondering why.
If I'm picking a make, I'll pick Wen.
Right. I'd be sad if she died.
She's the number one with.
I was shocked, but after getting over that initial shock and kind of disappointment of like no more make Ken, I was like, yeah, all right, we're moving on.
Possibly also no more make Tar because he's spiraling.
He's not.
He seems like he's going to do something stupid. Yeah.
I probably wasn't that sad because I always had trouble like remembering them apart, like who was who.
Same.
Between the brothers.
Tired first.
Like to me, they were like twins. Like they were like the same person.
Cross, were you sad?
I did actually. I was very sad. I will consent that I think that there's something to be said about like grieving the empty space that maybe we haven't hit yet to some degree. But, that kind of is what it is to some degree. I was definitely sad on the second pass, especially noting all of the highlights that Fonda was kind of setting up with Ken very clearly in the way that he was truly excelling in a way that even Hilo never was as a Horn. After struggling for so long, after he had to pick up the mantle when Hilo had to become Pillar. So there's some of that, and then you start to get the emotional investment in his success when you start kind of narrowing in on it. And it hit me in the face this time. I would agree. I had a similar reaction this time.
Something that has gone kind of unaddressed, but I'm sure it's on the minds of a lot of the Greenbones in the clan in the aftermath. This is a very stark change of pace for the violence in the city. It is unprecedented as far as I can tell, as far as the honor of taking down a high-ranking Greenbone goes. Like there is none to it. So I don't know if we just haven't run into something like that and it happens once in a while, or assassinations take place in forms that we haven't been exposed to. But it felt like we've entered into a new era of warfare, a much more guerrilla and brutal and unhonorable way of fighting each other.
Marrow has a lot to say about that in the next chapter. So yeah,
that's fair.
I'm definitely with you.
Yeah, they kind of touch on it next chapter, I think.
Yeah. But I still think the point stands is that part of the reason for a lot of the shock is obviously this is outside of the terms of engagement, and the terms of engagement have been Aisha for so long.
Yeah, especially I think because like the clans are publicly at peace. And so like we did, like Lon was gunned down last book, which was like 6-ish years ago at this point. But now there's been 2 years of peace and tensions were sort of on the rise. So people were clued in. They're like, it's not inconceivable that, a high ranking member of No Peak would be taken out in some way. And it does seem like Greenbones use guns a little bit to like, when they're doing hits like that, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, things are evolving.
One is conceivable in the rules of Aisha, and the
Yes.
other is an act of terrorism. That's your levels of differences. We made this the sort of comment about 9/11, I think last week or the week prior, and sort of the way that like flights were impacted and things like this. This is sort of a culture shock to some degree, to a much smaller degree, of course, but as a counter example or a similar example, this seems to elicit a similar effect on a smaller scale. With that, Chapter 46, Unforgivable. Rushing home, Shay finds the Call household to be on high alert, with only the most trusted allowed in. Assumptions about the attack fly around in Shay's head as she is reeling from the reality of what's occurred, but nothing is fully making sense. And then, the unthinkable happens. Marrow turns himself in for the crime. After an explanation as to how they got him, Jwen, the assumptive horn of the clan, intends to keep Marrow alive for further interrogation. She sees the path of torture in Marrow's future, and recalling her failure to kill Doru, kills the man that she loved so dearly. So this is an intense chapter following an intense chapter, just sort of absolute back-to-back, no fallout, no question, no scheming, no trying to resolve it. It's a moment of character from Marrow that we'll get to some degree in a moment, but Shay immediately in her head jumps to Ait because Ait is the rule breaker. She has for a long time. She's hopped over succession. She's similar to the chapter in the last book, skirted Aisho, but never so flagrantly done something like this. And then that's quickly debunked as we find out that it's Marrow.
This made me sad for Shay. It also made me roll my eyes pretty hard at Marrow.
Yeah, this fucking guy.
Yo,
This fucking guy.
I was pretty upset with him.
Talk about what made you roll his eyes. Sorry, Cross.
No.
Like, he couldn't have right after Zapunio and those guys came in, he couldn't have called Shay. I mean,
He's just got to be a little bit more forward thinking here. I know he was like, I couldn't do that and couldn't get you involved or whatever, but also, like, you can't let some people onto the grounds either.
yeah. What if they'd killed Shay?
Come on, man.
Come on, dude.
I don't know.
I mean, if it were to have been thwarted, I have no doubt that that threat would have been followed up on. Like, they would have taken out his family. I
But,
truly
But
believe
Shay,
he believes
Shay
that.
and Hilo are smart. They could let them on while knowing they're there, and then, see what they're doing.
I kind of think he did the only thing that he could do. He protected his family and he gave himself up to die. I mean, this is what this was like. I don't know. That was kind of his only decision.
I think that I'm with you, Ben, on that. I don't think that he really had a path
It was
outside
not.
of this to some degree. He could have done a lot of things, but I think even he, and this gets into kind of the thing that PJ was bringing up, and a quote even, why did I do it? Did I hurt you that badly? Yes, but that's not why. And then he gets into the sort of specifics of the family and the way that they wouldn't have been able to reach into another country to save them and to pull them out in the moment. And that's sort of a tough reality to swallow, is that the clan isn't everywhere and cannot be everywhere. We've got our little island, we've got our little town, we've got our little party groups, but ultimately you're not a government, you're not a world, class organization.
And I don't think Hilo would have prioritized protecting a bunch of Shatari and unconnected family members.
Also, that would mean admitting that he was half Shatarian, which Hilo already doesn't like, which hasn't been brought up to begin with.
Not Hilo, but I just feel like he should have told Shay.
Yeah.
And been like, you can't tell anyone, here's why. And then she could have shade it and thought of a fourth option.
So it seems like, the night of Poppy's wedding, he might have said it had she not,
Be
told
so
him something
honest.
that she knew would lead him away, which the book, it says she knew would lead him away. Just to give Ben and I our flowers, as they say.
Exactly.
I can buy myself flowers. Just constant.
He's on shuffle today.
I'm on shuffle.
Was the wedding after the meeting?
Yes.
It was after the request for the meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
After the people came to his office.
Yeah.
And then
Gotcha.
she's like, oh, he wanted to tell me something. Now I get it. But this whole thing is tough on Shay. I felt really bad for her.
Yeah.
Could you
I
kill
thought
your
this-
ex?
Will not answer that question. I'm just
This
kidding.
chapter
That's a
was
joke.
much more intense than the previous somehow.
Yeah.
Also,
That is.
just before we move on completely, I rolled my eyes at Morrow because he was like, I never would have done it if I thought they would have hurt you or the kids. And it was like, they got you to do it by threatening your nieces. What do you mean? Think they're
Yeah,
above?
exactly.
Like, Morrow, what's going on, my guy?
There was some naivete from old Marrow in that.
He's just weak, thin-blooded.
I was waiting for someone to say it because I do think that there is an element there, and I think it is naivete. Book smart, street dumb, and this is you have to be street smart here at a minimum in order to make it.
If some gangster dudes come up to you and start blackmailing you, basically, and want inside of a very secret complex, I'm going to have to ask you to put 2 and 2 together on that one.
Obviously, someone's going to die.
Exactly. And I think there's probably like 2 choices on who that person's going to be.
Right.
So, and somehow we got option C. So
yeah, true. We escaped narrowly without it being either A or B or D, which is the Gwen and the kids. You know,
right.
Like truly, that's the narrow miss that we experienced in the last chapter. But yeah, well.
He does redeem himself a little by turning himself in.
Yeah, like I said, I think he got himself down a path that this was the only thing that he could do. So I will give him a little credit for that.
It's the honorable thing to do. I would posit.
I want to know, what are the mechanics of this car bomb? Because this seems so like
open the door.
It seemed like it was just like on
door
a
or the
timer.
ignition.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that feels so like unreliable.
I know. I was thinking that too. Like,
You
what if
thought
they
it was
just
just
didn't have to
timed.
drive anywhere that day and it just explodes in the garage?
Right.
A great plan. You ruined your one shot.
Well,
I would have
you
gone
could-
with poison.
with
Personally,
poison the whole thing.
yes.
The car bomb, to me at the very least, the way that it reads is that it doesn't get initiated until ignition, and that's your flip switch
That's
for
the time.
when
the
the
time
timer
starts.
starts.
Gotcha.
Yeah, not just like a loose time clock.
That's what I was
That's the
thinking.
only way that it makes any sense.
Timing it so that whoever the driver that fetches the car has time to go pick up Hilo.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the passenger side is what he opened, right? So when the Hilo opens the door, presumably. That's okay. Now I'm getting it.
No,
Okay.
I thought Ken was in the car. And he was
He
like
was.
opening the door, like opening his door. That's how I pictured it.
He's getting out, was he?
Yeah, like he's getting out of the car on the driver's side.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Oh yeah, you're right.
There's a lot at risk with this plan, which is also why it didn't go correctly. Like, this is not a foolproof plan because they are just a bunch of Barocon thugs that are like half gangsters attempting to do what they can, right? Like, that's...
And I think they're like, even if it doesn't blow anyone up, it's still a warning.
Mhm.
They're just trying
And
to blow
also-
some shit up.
This was the number 2 team. It wasn't Barrow and Moot, the A team. We got the B team out here.
Probably just watched Casino.
Probably true. That's great.
That movie starts with a car bomb.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
For everyone at home.
Thank you. And for me.
There's a strong introduction here that I wanted to talk about with Juen being introduced as a mostly new character. You know, he'd been mentioned by name a couple of times before this to kind of build him up in the background, but for him to be pulled to the foreground so heavily. What'd you guys think of our introduction to Juen, especially as a quasi-clan mediator here, all of a sudden from First Fist to...
Big logistics guy, apparently.
Sounds like maybe he'd be a good horn.
Seems like he's pretty good for the job. He had
Well, a good counter horn to
Yeah.
creepy guy on the mountainside.
yeah.
Now Swen? Yeah.
It seems like he's already created a pretty great rapport with Shay as weatherman. And like hopefully that means them sharing this sort of skirting the rules, as it were, together for Shay to execute Morrow. Forges a bond that allows them to work well together. That's my hope, at least.
Seems like a reasonable guy.
So you think maybe like a little Hilo doesn't need to know everything type of vibe.
Some discernment.
Or
Weatherman reads the clouds, the horn reads the streets. I don't know.
Horn helps maybe?
the puddles.
Horn gets the umbrella.
Puddles. Yeah, there you go. That's a better metaphor. Yeah, I appreciate Juen for what he adds entirely here. So, not that I want to steer back to Marrow too far and kind of his, sort of lowliness, but the quote that I read, why did you do it? Did I hurt you that badly? Yes, but that's not why. Reading into that a little bit and sort of the decision, this is like, I think to me, the most brutal sort of response is like, yeah, you actually did hurt me bad enough where I would consider something so severe. But ultimately, like, this is not me. Like, considering is very different than acting upon it. And just because it was in the back of my head and the way that I feel is very different than, what I've done here. I don't know. What'd you guys think about this sort of Marrow post-mortem on the relationship?
Tough breakup.
Yeah, not surprised to hear that from him.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of this because of what you guys brought up earlier, in that he could have brought it up during that wedding. Kind of makes me feel like he is complicit in it to a certain degree.
Well, like he
yeah,
was
actually.
he was gonna bring it up, and then Shay was like, "Bro, I killed our baby."
Yeah. So
he like wanted to talk to her about something, but still, spit it out, Marrow.
I would have maybe led with that and not, what are we?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All that nonsense. This guy.
Yeah, like if she answers wrong, then sorry, you're gonna blow up.
But yeah, you didn't want to be my girlfriend anymore or even entertain it, and so I enabled the murder of your brother. Is that a deal breaker?
Circle yes or no, and like hands that on a note to her, basically. But then takes it back at the last second, crumples it up, throws it on the ground after she opens her mouth and says 2 words.
Yeah, Marrow, definitely a drama kid.
Throughout this conversation, I'm becoming less and less sympathetic for the way that Marrow handled it.
I don't think I think that there's some sympathy to be had, but I think that it is sort of the death knell on the whole thing was that moment, right? Like that was the moment in which the letter was sealed and like he wasn't going to turn back.
Mm-hmm.
I could gush for years about the way that Shay, in like this page basically that happens of her sort of reacting to the moment in which she both decides that she has to kill Marrow, the way that she politically goes through it because she sees the potential and the likelihood of torture from Tar, of course, for these deaths, and from Hilo as sort of a comeuppance for Ken, and her immediately wrestling with the guilt of her failing to kill Doru, into the actual moment that she channels and kills him and then rushes away in what is perhaps the most emotional writing I've seen of any character in this entire series, that I haven't cried reading any of these books again. And this absolutely put me on the ground while I was in the middle of a workout running. And I was just done. I had to stop. I went and started rowing. I was just done. So, I don't know. Hit me like a wave.
I was much more businesslike. I don't know why.
I was sad for Shay. I mean, like, I was heartbroken for Shay.
It is sad for Shay. Like, it's not about Marrow's death itself. It's about Shay's reaction to Marrow's death.
I don't know, trying to get over it at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, you did what had to be done.
God.
You saved him.
Yeah.
I mean, she kind of redeems herself and can forgive herself now for letting Doru go.
At the very least, if she can't forgive herself for that choice or for that decision, she can publicly own this killing, which I think is a little bit different, because I think this is more of a cruel edge, but she didn't want to have the cruel edge. That was never her game.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that she has to kill one of the few people that she's close to in the world. Yeah. I don't know. These chapters are so emotionally, this chapter in particular, that very end, is so emotionally charged as she remembers different moments and they like flirt back with her brain, and she has, it's the spreading cracks of memory that she recalls. I just, there are lines in here that I love, I adore.
It is beautifully written.
Sorry, I was having a coughing fit. But this is where I really felt for Shay, and then the next chapter we see her, she's like suffering more than from the other deaths, and it's because Marrow was more like helpless, so she felt even more responsible because he was like powerless, whereas Lon and her grandfather were these fortified figures. I don't know.
Part of the game.
So yeah, I think with Marrow, it's like he wouldn't have been involved at all if not for her. So this whole thing was kind of her fault just for dating him at all.
Yeah.
So, in that vein, do you think Shay would have reacted like this? Just keeping herself in bed and like sequestering herself away from everybody for days and days on end, if she hadn't killed him herself and let Miktar have his way with him? Like, is this because she killed him, or is this because he did what he did and died?
I think it's quote unquote killed him. Like she's responsible for his death and involvement, and that's what's causing all this pain and depression. And yeah, I think either way, whether it was Tara that killed him or her, she's going to be in a pretty similar spot.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it would have been similar. I think if Tar had gotten his hands on him, I think Shay probably kills him eventually and then has that same Doru type guilt of not being strong enough to carry it out herself and save him from the pain. And then she's in probably an even darker place at this point because she has the guilt of doing it herself and then also allowing it to go on too long. The sliding doors moment.
Yeah. Okay.
Plus, like, the resentment she would have for Tar and Hilo after that, it would just be, like, a lot of mess.
It's pretty messy.
It's a brutal end.
I have a question based on her killing of Marrow and then the way his, like, death energy or life force enters her. It's just, like, I think it raises a lot of interesting questions about the afterlife in this world because it's, like, seems pretty definitive evidence of a soul of some sort escaping the living body, and then we see it's not just a green bone thing because it happens when Hilo kills Amy too, a similar thing. Did that stand out to anyone else?
Was Amy not green?
She was not.
Still has like the life force or whatever.
They talk about it when they're dealing with like mice and stuff too, to a certain degree. I just saw it as like energy, like electrical impulse.
Yeah, I didn't really think about a soul or afterlife. But
yeah, I think that PJ, that is a good point too. Like it could just be energy isn't destroyed, right? It's
right.
That kind of vein I wasn't thinking of.
In specific
electrified meat sacks, right? So it's kind of like the electricity inside.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. The other thing to compare between the death of Amy and Mara here as well is actually the Jade difference, because we know that Jade specifically is a power amplifier. It's a life amplifier. And so it seems like that's also perhaps a moment here of sort of the impression that we get, because you can detect that aura and that physical difference too. So there's something to the soul of someone who's connected with Jade too, versus just a general soul and a general life energy.
Yeah, if it was purely mechanical, you wouldn't have something like Stone Eyes and the Abuke sort of resistance to Jade or inertness. Like if it was strictly a mechanical sort of, this deals with the way that muscles and synapses work and amplifies it. That'd be a lot more difficult to explain inertness. So having a little bit more complicated, shadowy soul interactions makes that easier to understand, I think.
That is the explanation, though, is biological differences in, like, the Abuke were native to the
DNA
island. Yeah.
Blood
and
type.
like Shay says, she knew, like, rationally she knows Stone Eye-ness is a recessive genetic characteristic.
Okay.
G positive.
A little bit of both going on, just like our real world, perhaps.
little bit of everything.
I have one last thing on this chapter. I was trying so hard to remember my impression of Marrow when we first meet him, the first time I read, because I just obviously did not like him the whole time, this one. And so I was talking with other people who have read it, and I was like, did I not like this guy the whole time? What's the deal? And I think it was a little bit of both. I definitely didn't like him upon first meeting, and then I liked him when we get the cute little musical bit. And I didn't like him again when I found out he ran away from the duel, and then I was out on him from that point. So I think I was just super out on him on the reread.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
I mean, I didn't have a problem with him when you first met him. I thought he was a nice guy, but
Weak-blooded.
he got involved with the wrong people.
And that
Which is also
was Shay.
Right. To be fair, Hilo also kind of warned about this thing. He did talk specifically about some of the risks and why it was also important for Shay to ask for that marriage, because then that would bind them together, it would bind the clan together with them, and Hilo did kind of try to prevent this. Yeah.
Listen to Hilo, people.
Mm-hmm. Kill kids.
Yep.
Ask for marriages.
Yep.
Fully reasonable.
Well, yeah, that's it. That's all we got for you. On to chapter 47. Back to work. Shay is locked in the Weatherman's house, wallowing in guilt, remorse, and sorrow for her actions and Morrow's fate. We learn that she's only left the house to attend Ken's funeral, that Tar seemingly harbors some resentment for how Morrow was killed, and that Wound Poppy is acting as Weatherman in her stead. Hallmate Wen arrives at Shay's house, shaking her sister-in-law from the shackles of her sadness through sheer determination and stubborn persistence. I thought this chapter, kind of like the first of this section, was pretty straightforward and still very telling and very well written. And so we already parsed it a little bit towards the end of our discussion of chapter 46, but what do we make of Shay's reaction here? And especially because it is very deliberately compared and contrasted to other death that she's endured. Why do we think her reaction to this one is so much more pronounced?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's because
It's her fault.
Mara wouldn't be in the game if it weren't for her. And then also, she, had to kill a defenseless person. And then it could be also a little bit of PTSD almost from doing her duty and what she had to do.
That's well said. Yeah. Yeah, I would mainly think that it's I think she always knew that this specific thing was a possibility when she got involved with Marrow, and I don't think she wanted to believe that. And so seeing kind of your worst fears come true in a situation where you're I probably should have seen this coming. I think there's just a lot of regret, a lot of
guilt.
Yep. And I think you can just spend a lot of time second guessing that. And that would explain why she's just paralyzed by it.
Do you think there was any element of her, now that she is so knocked down and not going, is she finally grieving Lon and her grandfather to some extent as well? Or maybe the added guilt of not reacting this way to their deaths is also feeding this.
It's possible, but it could also be the weariness of more death, more loved ones dying. She's cracking.
Yeah. Knowing that you're deep in a fight that's not going to end anytime soon.
Right. More people she loves are probably going to die. Or she might die. Everyone's dying.
I think there's something to be said about her being in the state already that it allows her to grieve the other deaths. But I think beyond that, it's just finally having the chance to emotionally look at and approach all of the decisions that she's made and all of the crazy circumstances she's been a part of, including the duel with Ait and just just everything. And I think Make Wen is kind of the hero of this section again. This book, I could see this book. I could agree with that argument. Just being the one that should be, by all rights, affected by this the hardest, and is the voice of reason, and has to be. I think it'd be hard for anybody else to convince Shay that she's being a little bit too indulgent in her sorrow.
Yeah, to your point, PJ, I think not only is it very likely that Wen is the only one who could rouse her from this, not only because of the guilt that her being upright while Shay is down will instill into Shay, but also they have that relationship of bonding and working together for the betterment of the clan these last 6 years. They have, the shared love of the nieces, Wen's children now, niece and nephew.
They have the abortion
bonding. And they have, and Wen just handles it so expertly. She doesn't bring up any of that. She just is like, can I work again? What's up? I'm trying to work. She just is so normal almost about everything that it has no, the shocking normalcy of it all brings Shay out of it to an extent. And then once she's out of it, she builds and builds and builds.
I wanted to bring up something too. I know that we were talking about the deaths that Shay's experienced, and we've gotten varied reactions among them. Of course, we've talked about the big two, but the third that I want to bring into the picture is Lawn's, right? And Lawn's, because of its relation to Aisha, was one of vengeance and revenge, versus these other two kind of being outside of it on either side of the coin. Has a very sort of different grief cycle, I think, for Shay. Not something that she's familiar with. At the very least, she could understand to some degree, given that the killing of Lawn is still not something that was condoned, but it was understood at the very least. It just brings something new to an understanding of death in the culture.
I also think another way this is different is she's mourning herself in a way, because there is that she had never considered herself a murderer before, and now she does. So that complicates everything.
Yeah. It's kind of bad. Hey, Aaron, have you killed anyone lately?
Me?
Yeah.
I killed a spider.
Wow.
You need them. The flies are going to be buzzing about your home.
I felt bad. Normally I put them outside, but it was by my bath towel, and I was like, that's too close, buddy.
Yeah,
you gotta go.
Let them know.
Yeah, cross the line.
Leave the corpse there so the other
buddy
spiders
before
know.
You killed him?
Huh?
She was like, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, buddy.
Why, have you killed anyone recently, Cross? Why do you ask?
Not that you could find.
Wow.
Where is Bane? Is he safe? Is he all right?
Things at home.
As far as we know.
That was an evil laugh.
They're always evil laughs. I can't help it.
The last
What are
thing
you
I
looking
have
for?
in this chapter is something that we jumped over a little bit, not majorly. And we have touched on it a little bit, but what do we think is going on with our guy, Tar?
Suffering.
That's it. Nailed it.
Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Suffering leads to the dark side.
You think he's going to the dark side?
No, I just think he's going to do something freaking dumb. Yeah. He's just going to pop off at the wrong time and do something, wheel off and go cavalier and probably do something stupid.
Yeah, he's going to go out in a blaze of glory.
He does not seem to be here for a long time.
Here for a good time, not a long time.
Yeah.
I don't think he's here for a good time either.
He's here for a fucked up bad time.
He's here for a time.
Yeah, no, the only
he showed up.
Romantic, yeah, the only romantic or sexual stuff we get from him is with his lover, who he is said to fight with like cats and dogs. So even that, it's not bliss or anything great.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems right now. We should be in a good place. Last week was all schemes. This week is all fallout.
This week is all sad.
Damaged.
And
cracks that are in need of Kinitsugi.
What? Repeat
I
that?
said cracked porcelain pots that are in need of kinetsugi. It's the Japanese practice of melding together ceramics with gold so that it becomes something more beautiful after the fact.
Jade and gold?
Damn it! You ruined my metaphor.
Or did she improve it?
May have. Yeah, fair point.
But yeah, I think that has covered chapter 47.
So, chapter 48, the double-double. Barrow is alive.
Wow.
Barely surviving the tacit poisoning due to his exposure to SN1 and a fortunate combination of drugs Moot had used that keeps him alive and breathing and makes him make it to the hospital. As a result, Barrow is left scarred, jadeless, and absolutely abysmally hopeless. Little piece of shit that he is. He spends months in his apartment as the seasons change before he decides to risk everything at the gambling tables of the double-double. Being pulled aside by Iton, he tries to encourage Barrow to live and survive as opposed to chasing down the path of suicide and offering to help sober him up and release him. And Barrow decides to instead tell his full life story, of which Iton immediately phones the clan over because Barrow turned himself fucking in.
Yeah, wasted.
Short chapter, so much happens. Obviously, warnings up top for this chapter, this section. But yeah, our cockroach lives.
Okay, so when he's sitting in his apartment, I picture this as in Twilight when Edward leaves
the season pages.
When Edward leaves Bella,
sad music.
And there's a possibility. That's the song.
I didn't know there were words in that song.
All that I had is all I can get. It's actually a really sad, really well done part where it like spins around, or in the season change, or in the book, it just goes like September, October on each page.
Mm-hmm. Every page you turn is a month.
Yeah, that's how I felt for Barrow, and then I like felt bad for Barrow.
Whoa, that's kind of a revelation.
I know. I was like, oh, he's so depressed.
I didn't feel bad for him.
He's going through it, Ben. I'm Team
Good.
PJ now.
All right. I'd like to say I don't genuinely like Barrow. I'll take it for the memes, but I don't know if this makes me a horrible person, but up until this point I had never rooted for somebody ignoring a plea for help. I was so glad the guy's just like, all right, and dealt another hand.
He's like, hey man, if that's what the gods want, the gods
just like, hey dude,
cool, you're right.
Yeah,
I think he's like our anti-hero, where
he's
like
not Taylor Swift.
He's gonna come through.
Wow.
And we're gonna be like, well, good thing we didn't kill him. I mean, he's already proven that he can give away some good info. All you need is a monkey. Then Barrow's on your side.
You don't think he's going to fuck this up again?
he's absolutely going to fuck this up again.
I was going to say. Yeah.
He's going to be surrounded by green bones. He's going to be surrounded by the only thing in the world that he wants more than anything else. He's going to fuck this up for everybody.
But fuck what up? He doesn't have anything.
Everyone else's lives. His life's forfeit for all I care. But he's going to drag more than one person down with him.
It's like he irradiates death.
He really
and bad
does.
luck for other people. Yeah.
I'm starting to believe Senior Moot, Barrow is protected by the gods because he keeps trying to die and he can't.
It's kind of unfortunate in a very different way. Like it's like, oh my god, I am barely 21. I think is what we get the description, like his age in this chapter, and
which I believe he was 20.
So old.
Wasn't he also 21 when Andon arrives in Southtrap?
Like
out
the
that
same
they're
age.
the same age, yeah.
So it also says 21 here for the sake of the show, of course. But that could be that it's just a little bit out of the chronological order of things because Barrow's story could be told at a slightly different rate than everyone else's. So
yeah,
it feels mostly chronological, but
the 21 could have been like right when he gets out of the hospital, and then now this is months later.
Yeah.
He's a little older. Blah blah blah.
recovery catches us up to this point. Which actually makes sense because the sort of Dio and all of the other stuff happens in the spring, does it not? Or in warm weather, of course, when they're going out to the park. And so he sees winter change to spring, change to summer. So that means
Like
yes.
Bella.
Okay, this fits. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Like Bella in her
I'm
room.
going to make Ben watch it.
Twilight?
Yeah.
No.
This is the second one even. But you got to watch two. Which I think is
I'm good.
Just the
watch
deadpan
just
of
the
it.
baseball scene on YouTube.
I used to work at Blockbuster, and it was during the time that all the Twilight movies were coming out, so I feel like I've seen them all. And one day I did have one of my coworkers, just while it was very slow, I was like, just tell me the story of Twilight, oral history. And they did. So it was quite incredible.
He knows everything.
Yep. I kind of know about it. And I know about the baseball game because that played on our thing like fucking all the time, the looping DVD. So I saw a lot of highlights of that.
Really good CGI.
Both this chapter and the baseball scene have Monkey Man in it, though. That's nuts. That's
True.
nuts.
How did we do that?
Why are we so focused on Twilight? Was that my fault?
I don't
think that was
understand.
your fault.
Actually,
I'm sorry.
Wasn't this your fault? Yeah. You brought us to
I don't know.
here.
So
Now you're like, why are we so focused on Twilight? Who's doing was this? She says, having done the thing.
I'm just glad that other people also feel the same scenes as I do
Yeah, I
I-
totally get
in
it.
their mind's eye.
as a youth, at one point, family cash strapped, hard up for cash, as it were. Library across the street, very small. One of the movies they had there, Twilight. So I have seen the first Twilight movie 100 times.
I
and
don't
I've seen
need
the
your
bonus features on that
excuses.
movie 100 times. So
Wow.
that is why
I don't need your
instantly
excuses.
loves it in
You
my head.
wanted to watch it.
He loves it. We're not saying he doesn't. I also
do not.
enjoyed the
You
movie.
chose
I'm not
to
gonna-
watch.
I
I'm not gonna lie.
don't.
It's fine. Cool. All right.
But I
Back-
Lie to yourself.
Back to
baseball.
the
what are your
the story
thoughts?
at hand.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Barrow's withdrawals from Jade that we kind of experience over the course of this, right? He begins to kind of experience those cravings in a way that we haven't understood until now.
I don't know if I actually read this chapter because the entire time my hand was vibrating from anger that he's still alive. So
I thought you were
No, I'm
Team
just kidding.
Barrow.
I'm kidding.
What were
It
his
feels
withdrawal symptoms?
different from everybody else going through like overexposure and withdrawals and stuff. And maybe it's just the insane amount of SN1 that he's been like priming himself with, which they kind of allude to as a reason. But I don't know what to make of it other than that.
To Aaron's question of like the withdrawal symptoms, it comes down to the hopelessness, the sort of feeling of like it's the general sort of depression of things, in addition to the immediate want or desire to like chase it down, right? And the sort of need of this is the only thing in his life that can bring him meaning, of which is why he also ends up going and gambling everything away, right? So it's more than just there's a physical desire in addition to a status desire that happens here.
I
Sounds
have
like he
sort of-
needs some uppers.
Does sound like
He might.
I have sort of, I don't know if it's not
some Z.
strictly speaking conspiracy corner, but I have like an unhinged thought train that just came through here. So Barrow, as we know, wants Jade just to have it, more or less. Doesn't necessarily want the powers. He's okay with having the powers that come with it, but that's not the end goal. The end goal is really just to wear Jade and to be seen with it and to see himself with it, right? More or less, that's a good encapsulation of things. Fair enough.
Who wants
I think he wants
And then
the.
he's
I think he wants
also-
the power.
He wants the social
Well, he
status.
doesn't. He
at
doesn't
the
really
very least.
work for it though. Like Moot trains and works hard for the powers. Barrow's hit or miss with it. My question is, he's doped up on insane amounts of shine. I wonder if that impeded his ability to use the Jade when he did have it. Like
Interesting.
maybe he was overdosing kind of on shine even then, and that's why. Because he was just like so keen. I don't know. That's what it's.
Like, puts a
working
cap
thought.
on it.
Yeah, maybe. Like he was
But
doing
Lon
his
could still do
abilities.
everything he needed to do. Like, he was deflecting and shit when Andon was there with his shine. I do not know.
I would
He
have
was not
assumed
as
that
deep in the
Moot
game
would have been
there.
on a similar like shine regimen as Barrow.
Poison Jade. That's what it was.
It was Poison Jade. All right. If not poison, cursed? Haven't talked about curses at all. I don't know if that gets into anything spiritual.
Lon says, or somebody says, they don't keep the essence of the people who wore the jade, but who fucking knows, man? I don't know. I'm not a penitent.
There's a lot of questions that revolve around sort of Barrow and the addiction and the sort of symptoms of Jade. But I think that it's interesting to see someone that's not trained with it and see how that's impacted him over the long run. But that said, moving on from that moment, Barrow makes it to the betting table and he bets it all. He's betting it all. He's putting it all down. He's got all this money from the drugs that he's been selling. He's like, fuck it. If the gods don't want me to live, they'll tell me at the betting table. And the dealer even tries to tell him, like, well, maybe that's not a good rationale because, like, the games are loaded against you, effectively, is what the dealer even alludes to in the moment. But, yeah, Barrow's never been a good guy, so why would the gods treat him like a good guy, like he asks, or thinks? Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about Barrow's big move at the betting table of the double?
The most likable Barrow's ever been.
We've all been at a casino table and been like, well, fuck it. I'm already losing. Take it all. Except it's not normally everything we have.
True.
Everything you brought in, though.
Yep.
No, I bet my sister at a table, and she doesn't know yet, so.
Did you lose?
I did, yeah.
Sorry, sister.
It's a bummer. Yeah, sorry, Piper. Rip.
We'll visit. Or write, maybe.
I am
Anyway.
uncomfortable.
Do you think they had 1-800 number for gambling addiction
That's
on the wall?
Hope K-Con.
One hopes.
The dealer could have sent him there.
I think the dealer did.
Yeah, the dealer did a hand signal. I don't think he actually did, but he did something. Oh, he did do a hand signal.
Yeah, he did a hand signal.
He was like,
But he did take a little bit more money from him after the hand signal. He did continue to take a little bit. But
and let me tell you something. I
Aiton
respect
kind of
the hell out of that, to be honest with you.
Aiton kind of explains, like, it's bad for business when people off themselves in the suites or off our roof. So, like, basically, if you're going to kill yourself, don't do it here.
It's disgusting. It's unsanitary. Nobody wants it, man. Come on.
Human blood is very sticky.
I think he'd bleed like a cockroach. It'd be black.
Gross.
Do cockroaches have blood?
Yeah.
They've got
Only
Got to, right?
nibbling on your toe.
I don't know.
What do you think? They just got goo or
I try to stay far away from them.
something?
you think they just got goo?
They've just got like tar.
Jello on the inside.
The only
Or, like,
cockroach that
mushy
I like is in
Mashed
Wally.
potatoes. Gravy.
There's a cockroach in Wally.
Ding! That's his noise.
Sweet.
He's a little buddy.
I'm hearing a lot of noises today.
Sounds. Yeah.
I would like to echo Ben's point that Barrow at the table, when he's just fucking super drunk and feeling it a little bit, also the most likable he's ever been. And then he starts talking, and you're like, oh yeah, this guy's the worst. But before Aiton rolls up and he just like keeps taking big old sways of Hochi, and he's just like, he's having a good time. I was like, God bless.
Hochi, take a
Go out
drink.
with a bang.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Great point. There's a ton of Hoji drank. So cheers. I'm taking 2.
That's so realistic. Did you see the shot, Ben? Check.
Love that for you, Ben. Yeah, it was super fast. Really quick. It's really good. Good work. Yeah. I mean, again, drunk Barrow, best Barrow, perhaps?
I mean, I would
Wasted Barrow?
I'd hang out at his table for a while until he started getting sad boy on us.
We're spouting bullshit.
Yeah.
He'd start talking politics and be like, all right, well, it was cool while you were cool, but now you're not, so goodbye.
Sure you had Jade, bro. Love to hear about it.
Very, very much the case if I lost my Ferrari. I I do also want to just to kind of round out the chapters. Specifically, I love that it's Iton, of course, of whom brings him back down to earth, and it gives it this, despite not knowing that it's Barrow, it is great to see that Iton has made this a part of his life and as part of his job is sort of trying to be that net for a lot of people. There's the convenience immediately of the business, but there's also the sort of nature of him not immediately feeding them into a program, but maybe recommending them to one and trying to offer some of that assistance for people of whom are hurting with various things, and very responsible, of course, of him and the clan. But Barrow breaks all that down immediately with the tell-all. So
I want
a cool
this
motherfucker.
scene, if adapted, directed by Guy Ritchie, because that's exactly the vibe that I got off of these different intersecting plot lines and how they're circumstantially getting intertwined. And they already were to a certain degree, but for some reason all I could think of was Snatch in this moment.
I was just thinking,
Good call.
totally hear Turkish being like, why don't you have any arms? Actually, it'd be his friend.
Yeah. Oh,
What's
what's his
his
fucking name?
Yeah.
Mikey?
And then, I think so. And then Turkish would ask about the monkey specifically. That's
Tommy.
how that would go. Tommy. Fucking clown.
but yeah, Barrow's fucking tell-all. And Iton, of course.
Iton's a cool motherfucker, and that is a nice monkey.
I wish you got the monkey's name.
Calling him Furious George from now on. That's his name, and no one can tell me otherwise.
Can
Furious
monkeys
George.
wear jade?
Wow. I hope so.
I don't think so, PJ.
Thought-provoking question.
Oh, I want Planet of the Apes, jaded out Caesar.
This sounds like one of those silly movies that Shay would love at the theater, especially if it were made into a musical.
Especially if Mero is still alive.
You had to bring that dagger home. All right. Well, that's all I have on 49 in Barrow. Fucking Barrow.
I mean, 48.
Favorite character.
48. Yep.
That does bring us to
Favorite
49,
character.
and even more Barrow, unfortunately, as we are cleaning out the rat house. Hilo arrives at the double-double to finish the interrogation of Barrow. Eventually, Hilo realizes who he's talking to, kind of, but doesn't fully realize the extent of Barrow's crimes. Thinks of how, ironically, Lon's optimism has finally seemingly paid off in the form of all this juicy intel Barrow has for the plan. The new information leads all over Janloon, including mountain-controlled districts, and the two largest clans work together more or less to root out Sordillo, who after being tortured by Tar, reveals everything he knows and is killed by Hilo. A lot going on in this chapter, which I don't think it was very long, but 3 sort of sections.
Oh, is Hilo the one who cuts Sordio's throat? I thought that was Tar.
Where's Hilo?
Hilo
comes
does it,
in?
and then Tar's...
Oh.
Yeah.
Sordillo, wasn't there some alleged ties to the Mountain Clan?
Well,
Yes.
I mean, via
Get to
Nell
that.
Swen and sort of the pressure that was levied by, or the communication that Hilo and Moot delivered.
And Sordio's, he says it was encouraged by the mountain.
Yeah.
So why did they agree to kind of join forces in this?
I think
Because a lot of it's in the mountain territory that Hilo can't reach in there. Are you asking why the mountain agreed to it?
Yeah.
I'd say because, publicly they're against violence when it's puts, innocent bystanders at risk.
Yeah, I think they more or less sort of had to. And then also, Sordillo says, as he's confessing, I'm not telling you anything you didn't already know. So it was trying to everybody kind of knows what's happening here. There's nothing more damning. There's nothing necessarily war provoking, I guess, from the mountain's point of view. It is interesting that they did so willingly help, but it kind of felt like they
It could
were
be
just,
PR,
I keep saying
right?
kinda. They were,
Yeah,
PR,
I was just going
and
to say PR as well.
they knew that if they didn't, war was likely, and Hilo's on the war path here. Rampage.
And maybe the mountain doesn't like an outside smuggler being able to reach so close to home. Like maybe they encouraged them, causing trouble, but the car bomb was too far for them.
I didn't get the vibe that it was too far. It's just like, I agree with you. It's more of a PR campaign covering up like they're perfectly okay with this, but they just have to act outwardly like they're not okay with it.
And having heat on someone like this is a risk for them, potentially. I'd rather devote energy into somebody more unknown. Maybe.
Yeah, there's also like, the price of failure for this guy. And also, I would imagine part of the mountain is just like, we're not huge fans of this jade smuggling anyway. If Hilo wants to do the dirty work of putting an end to it, whatever. Less work for us. He might get a little weaker in doing so. Who knows? But before we get into that, there is the tragedy, to me at least, of Hilo finally having his brother's killer in his grasp and having no idea and being thankful that Barrow is there.
Yeah, him saying like, "Oh, Lon was right to let him live." It's like, well, you don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not quite a tell-all that Barrow went through.
No. 100%.
Tell a lot.
He kept one.
Tell most.
What are a few secrets between new friends? But the quote I wanted to highlight here is, "I said I'd kill you if I saw you again. Remember?" He said in a low voice, he being Hilo. The man's sunken eyes widened, but Hilo released him with a quick shake inside. "I guess I can't keep that promise after all. Not after you've been helpful to the clan and with Lon watching." It's just like, God damn it.
Sheesh.
Making me cry. Tears.
Do you think Barrow's like,
It's
"Oh
tough.
shit, Lon's watching"?
He's like, oh shit, I'm the
No.
luckiest motherfucker alive.
Yeah. He's like, dumb luck of the gods once again.
Too slimy to kill.
It sucks. And then that sort of theme continues throughout this chapter because we have Barrow, basically a ghoul at this point, haunting Hilo, and then they go to meet with now Suenzen at the factory where Lon's downfall began. And it's just, after all these years, 6 years later, after all this, past just haunting Hilo, following him. He's back. Things are so different.
It's back to his horn life.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, shit, here we go again.
Aw, shit.
So we already touched on, that sort of uneasy alignment or alliance agreement between the Mountain and No Peak. Got our thoughts on that out there, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
But are we surprised that the Mountain did encourage Zapunio and Sordeo to strike at another pillar like this?
Not surprised at all.
Mm-mm.
Ite is a slithery little snake.
Were you surprised?
She's
it was
willing to
revealed
try
so
just
quickly?
about anything. That it was revealed so quickly?
Yeah.
Uh,
It's like this whole section, there's a lot of things that could be slow played, but we get the reveal pretty quick.
yeah. Not necessarily, I don't think. Like, I think your immediate reaction...
And it's not like she hired them. He said it was encouraged. I don't know. It wasn't like
Soft encouragement.
it wasn't like a go kill Hilo.
I just think the Mountain is... They don't play by the rules anymore. They like to act like they do, but they don't. And
Well,
so
I never play by the rules. She out here killing everybody.
right, exactly. Yeah.
Hide your kids, hide your wife.
She doesn't got no rules. So,
At Aaron.
Thank you.
yeah.
I'm surprised. Like, I'm not surprised. I am confused by the passage of time in this section specifically. It feels really accelerated and time jumpy at times, and then like really condensed and fast paced, and like it's all written in a similar tone, so it's hard to really know how much time has passed since the death, since the bombing. I don't know if it's mentioned. It might be, but it didn't register with me, and it wasn't like consistent enough for me to really get it.
I don't recall a specific time frame being laid out. I think it's been ongoing, though. I don't know. If there is a specific timeline that I'm missing, I apologize. I was under the impression it was kind of weeks. Like less than 3 months for sure would be my guess. It just seems like everything's been kind of going.
Yeah.
Especially once Barrow gave them all the hotspots to...
Right. But during that time, like in between there's the Barrow chapter talking about the passage of seasons. So like, is it chronological? Is it simultaneous? Is it just condensed? It's hard to know.
Doesn't matter.
That's true too. That's a good point.
A couple
It's all happening.
last few interesting tidbits here. We get a continued longer introduction into Juen that started with Cross's chapter where Shay kills Morrow. Now we get even more details on him. Tactical genius, it seems like, very detail oriented. And we also see Lot Jin seems to be continuing his rise at the ranks of the greener side of the clan of No Peak.
He was getting some torture in, wasn't he? Got his torture
Get
badge?
some fighting in for sure. I believe Aiton called him last chapter.
Some Eagle Scout shit. Oh yeah, we'll give him his torture badge. Lochin got his torture badge.
Listen.
And in fucking off the nowhere. Lochin torture
Say
badge.
what you will about No Peak. Here's what they do. They got they have like a deep rotation in their bullpen. They train up their dudes. They train up like Juen's
Next man up mentality.
Miss a beat from Ken. Like,
They've got a
let's go.
bench.
Yeah,
Thinking about that legacy.
Juen, he seems like a big logistics guy. What can Juen do for you? Type situation.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way that this just very casually, it's actually throughout this entire section. I've got some moments talking about it later, but just there's a lot of nice things that are just dropped into the background very casually to show that everyone is progressing without like pulling out entire scenes to, describe the way in which Lot has become a fist in his own right, or a finger. Yeah.
Right. Because we did it previous chapters, like early in the book, we do get that sort of dedicated page to him in a couple chapters, like specifically highlighting this. And then now, like you said, it's much more casual. And I think it's
progressive.
Kind of speaks to why I like this writing so much, Fondly style, because she just trusts us as readers to pick up on things. And I think that's part of why some of the revelations happen so quickly, because she knows, like, we're fucking smart readers. We're going to assume this happens. Bang, happened. Boom. Move on. No big deal. I don't have to keep it a secret for hundreds of pages for no reason. Everybody knows what's going on here. And then
I don't need
when
to
she
write
is a little
a
sneaky
10-book series to explain a family over 2 generations,
And then when she is a little sneaky, it hits extra hard.
Yeah.
My last note here is Hilo slits Sordio's throat, and Tar pretty incensed about this, pretty angry, pretty upset, or at least annoyed. And in my notes, I have Tar denied justice in quotes once again.
Get a grip, Tar.
But I don't think Tar was mad about the throat slitting. He was mad that Hilo was going to bury him, have him sent to family instead of chopped into pieces.
Yeah.
I think there's
That's what I read. That was my understanding.
Oh, interesting. I thought because he was torturing him, and there was the threat of Marrow's death being drawn out. I thought that was like the comparison, that we're going to have some more torture for Sordio lined up, and then the desecration of his body for the afterlife.
Yeah,
I
it seemed
thought
like
on
he
the
was.
other side of
upset
this.
him. Oh, you go.
Go ahead, Ben.
I was gonna make the same point that Thomas finished with. I thought he was more into the desecration of the body.
Yeah.
I think that's
On
more
the other side of
their
this,
point.
this does reiterate what Tar would have done to Marrow without question, and maybe with even further gradients of pain and torture. And yeah, Hilo almost seems sympathetic in
Gives him
these
the juice
moments
box.
that we approach. Yeah.
Such a dad, always carrying
I think
around
he's-
juice boxes.
There is that. I think it's more like he's just realistic, more so than sympathetic.
Got to be realistic about these things.
Do you think Hilo is going to tell his sons about how he gave this guy a juice box and then slit his throat?
His sons are fighting
Maybe
at the
Nico
dinner
when he's
table.
of age, you know? Like Nico seems like he'd hear it, and then
He'd go,
Hilo would immediately
"Then you
go into, by the way, I
killed
killed your mom. Yeah.
And then you killed my mom. Nico had heard the story before. And that's why you don't steal toys from your brother.
Yeesh! Chapter 50, Patience. We continue with the purging of the new green from Janloon, led by the Call family, as the information from Barrow continues to pay dividends. Shay and Hilo contemplate schemes to kill Zapunio, and Tar wears his pain on his sleeve. He encourages patience on Tar, as the revenge against the gangster will eventually come. Later, Hilo meets up with Ven Zondo, pushing and blackmailing him further into making a move against Ait Mata. There's this interesting moment that happens almost right away in the beginning that Hilo, as he's retaken his position as sort of the horn on the ground, has also become the more sort of patriotic person among the clan, among the folks. And I really appreciate sort of the way that's brought to the fold again as he's overtaken the media presence, the way in our minds.
In between these like sections where it points out the media coverage and the fact that these are like very public figures, I always forget that. I always just like think of them as sort of underground clan leaders.
Like shadowy.
And, yeah, exactly. And it's always a little bit jarring, but it's a good reminder when these little scenes pop up.
Private conversations publicly viewed as very important. I mean, like the ceremony with his emperorship that we went through before, you know, is a great example of reiterating that to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I just appreciate the way that he's suddenly overtaken that, considering she seemed like the stump speecher, the one who was standing up on the podiums being like, we should be supporting Kekinese only shit. And he's basically, by being out on the streets, built up the reputation of the clan again.
Go Hilo. Hilo as Horn is where he belongs.
It does seem that way. It's not
Also,
ideal that he's doing what he's doing.
To me, I took that kind of as, you know, talking is fine. And when there's nothing going on, they'll get you lots of wins in the press. But once there was an occasion to remind people of the role that the Greenbones historically have played and what they do, and like this is what being a Greenbone is. Oh, it's like that's what flipped it. Like just the reality of the situation.
Boiling it down, simply actions versus words, right?
Yeah.
I love the moment in which Shay and Hilo are conversing and talking about sneaking the sugar into his drinks because Zapunio is diabetic. And it just reminds me of the same sort of thought process that went into assassinating or attempting to assassinate Fidel Castro in the United States. It just gave me the same sort of things as like could we put stick a dynamite in a cigar or whatever? Like, can we blow up his face in some other way? And all of the different attempts just reminded me of that, and I appreciated that.
It also, like, it's surprising how little reach they have outside of KCON and how powerless they are against this,
I think this
guy, you know?
the situation, though, is tough. He's living on an island.
That Hilo got banned from.
Yeah, that Hilo got himself banned from.
Zapunio did a very good job of making sure that he couldn't be attacked by inviting him in the first place and by kidnapping the cousin way back at the beginning of the book that seemed inconsequential, and now we're dealing with the fallout.
They couldn't have like talked to their Espenian military friends, get like a black ops team to undercover assassinate the dude.
I had the
Undercover
same thought.
Well, looking back at that now, it's like what Cross was speaking to is just that seems like a well thought out setup on Zapunio's part to keep Hilo out of the country, because we were all asking that question, is like, why would he attack him with the police when he knows they're all going to die. And it seems like he was kind of 3 moves ahead of us all at that point.
And in terms of the Espinian Black Ops team, they would only do that if No Peak then helped them with their war. So,
Right.
like, why would Espinians help No Peak if No Peak's not going to invade the country Ortico for the Espinians?
Are they not already helping the Hispanians though? Like they're the direct
something more.
They refuse to help on the ground fighting and invade. They say we won't invade another country. Basically, is K-Con's stance.
That's fair.
Cool. Yeah, totally right. And I love it. It makes it so complicated, which is why ultimately this book is Jade War. It's the larger problem of what Jade brings to the world and the way that the world impacts this. Again, Jade War, Jade City, and then you maybe can posit Jade Legacy, but this sort of larger picture of things as it blooms and as it grows to a worldly perspective, when before it was contained on streets, and it's a different fight entirely.
Mm-hmm. Elevated.
So we've talked a lot about poor Tar. He's practically begging for a death of consequence at this point, willing to be thrown at Zapunio for some sense of justice, like Thomas had made a big point of in the last chapter. There's just this sort of need and desire that is propelling him for revenge in a way that Hilo hadn't even felt the depths of for Lon, I think, given the way that he is so bloodthirsty for it. Were there any other thoughts in this moment with Tar? We don't necessarily have to linger on it. I know that we've talked about it a little bit, but this is the furthest sort of, he's reaching into the depravity of like, just fucking, if you're not going to send me with some fists, just send me. I'll just go do it. I'll go die.
I think a part of that with Hilo, he had responsibility thrust upon him. He had to inherit the pillarship, whereas Tar is kind of floundering. He's what's his purpose now? I'm sure is what's going through his head, and doesn't have the luxury of responsibility to take his mind off of it.
I mean, Tar is still what's his role? Not Lantern Man, but
he's the Pillarman.
Pillarman with the nails.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, he's still high ranking, but it's not like he's absorbed in a new position or like.
I think this is just his plea for justice and revenge.
For sure.
He's not the guy you're looking to like think something through, I feel like.
And again, to reiterate, Hilo asks for patience because Lon's revenge is still in progress. The revenge of Lon is a long game that revolves around him taking down the mountain. And so as such, it's important to realize that Hilo will make your goals realized over time, or at the very least, he promises that he will try to. So that's the ask of patience and namesake of the chapter. Did you have a song to accompany that, Aaron?
I do.
I don't think so. What?
Do you?
Yep.
Yeah, you have to sing it.
Always get what you want. I'm not going to sing it.
Get what you need.
Exactly.
Right. Gotcha.
You try sometimes.
Yep. We missed this moment as well earlier, but chapter 46, Unforgivable, just reminds me of Unforgettable. That's what you are.
Beautiful.
But that's it. That's all. Those are all the song titles for this week.
I need everyone to sing more.
Well,
welcome
we're all
to
bad at it.
The musical podcast.
We're hitting shuffle this week as we talk about song titles.
You know that there's always like a horrible musical episode like Scrubs, or they always like try to squeeze in. Cross, you keep moving this like shirt sleeve, and I keep thinking someone is standing right there.
There's 3 shirt sleeves and they're tangled somehow.
I'm like,
I don't know.
Who's in your closet?
It's me. It's just me. It's only me. I'm so sorry. Yeah, no, totally get it. The tragic musical episode is, I'm going to blame it on Joss Whedon for the most part, but yeah, as it goes. Buffy. God damn it. Had to ruin it for everyone. That said, to round out the chapter, our final note here, While it has been 2 years since the conversation with Vensando, we return to it because he has been a little bitch, not making any moves. And Hilo calls him out as such in the moment, which is like pushing blackmail to some degree. It's very interesting. To quote
Straight
Hilo
up.
here, "This isn't a corporate acquisition," Hilo interrupted. "Aitmata came from the business side as weatherman, but when her father died, it only took her 6 days to kill her rivals and take control of the mountain." And there are definitely moments of blackmail, but there's also this like, come on, dude, if you're going to ever own it.
But Cross, you left out the
this is your
burn.
time.
There's a sick burn. Is it really going to take you
Which burn?
2 years? What took her to do in 6 days?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But also
Bro.
the straight up, like, she's not going to like hearing about the traitors in her midst. Like, it's
Yeah.
straight up blackmail. And there's
For
some
sure.
nuance to it and some
Well, like, get to it,
flowery
Vensando.
language, but
Get your thumb out of your ass.
Like, I'm holding up my end of the bargain. You need to do your part. So it's not full. That's where I mean, like, it's not full blackmail. There is obvious pressure for blackmail, but it's like, I've pulled all the strings. He's done his stuff to the Iwi family that he's already promised. He's gone against the, oh my God, K, name starts with Kobin family. And so he's pushed against those other families and those other levers. And it's like, come on, dude, I've given you your opportunity. You got to take it. And he's just sitting there on his thumb.
if you want to take power, you can't wait for everybody else to fall in line behind you. Something to that extent was said.
Entirely.
Guess that means chapter 51 is up. The Unlucky Ones. Mate Wen arrives in Aspenia with a fairly large shipment of jade for the Tispenian allies of No Peak. After getting through security, she meets with Andon, and the pair are joined by Roan Toru in distributing the jade to the equivalent of fists throughout Aspenia. After she and Andon head out. Afterwards, she and Andon head out to grab a bite to eat.
All right. They constantly allude to, like, I'll let you show me some good Aspenian food. They have yet to describe any Aspenian food.
Well, they did vaguely as some sort of at the very first meeting with the Heons, but that was it.
Okay.
But again, vague. Blank.
I want the equivalent of
Didn't the Heons
crispy
make him-
squid balls.
The Heons made him food from Taitan, didn't they, to make him feel at home?
Yes, but it was
You're right.
contrasted to the food that you'd had there already. So that was the
Gotcha.
idea.
Gotcha. Trying to place it.
I
But-
thought in this chapter was a little judgy.
Oh, really? How so?
When hasn't she been? That's why she's such a good spy.
She just like when she's like having trouble liking Andon because of what he did to Hilo. It's like, what about what Hilo did to Andon?
I also have
Hilo
trouble
did
liking
what he
Andon.
had to do.
And she doesn't seem to be on the same page as Hilo is, or doesn't seem to understand the stance that Hilo has taken with Andon regarding his prospects for returning.
It's very nuanced. Only brothers would know.
PJ, can you elaborate on your thoughts? I am confused.
Well, because he says that Andon says, I know Hilo won't let me come back unless I agree to be a Greenbone again. She's like, no, we want you back, and you're welcome to come back. We just think you have better prospects here. And like it seems like she was kind of sold a false bundle of goods regarding the situation.
Interesting. Okay. That makes sense. I just took that as, they have those in-bed conversations about what's going on with the clan. She gives him advice, that sort of thing. So I just took that at face value.
Okay.
But up top, speaking of Wen, she's just really good at this spy shit. There's the cleverness and the deceptive simplicity of the plan to smuggle Jade into Taitan, and how, her and Shay are trying to work out all of these complex schemes, and Wen's just like, hey man, easy peasy, I'll just walk in with it.
Mm-hmm.
That was some real magician type shit that she was doing there.
It was crafty. Nail polish remover.
Mm-hmm.
gets anything off.
I thought that was funny for that reason, Aaron.
Yeah. It's like, oh, they have nail polish remover.
It also just felt like so counter to the sacred, like obviously we're well beyond Jade actually being sacred and all that, and that's just another degradation of it, I guess, that they spray it with stuff to smuggle it and then put it in soak it in chemicals.
I enjoyed the idea of Jade aura sniffing dogs.
I know, that was very interesting to me. That's something I would like a whole chapter on.
PJ, maybe animals can sense Jade auras. I don't know.
Is Aiton's monkey going to wield Jade?
If we're lucky.
So dope.
If we really want things to pop off in Jade Legacy, then yeah.
It's gonna be the scene from Aladdin where
how many animals have been introduced to you outside of the monkey?
He's just gonna put on the Jade.
You're totally right. It's gonna be the Aladdin moment.
Oh no, the monkey has Jade. It's gonna be great. I really, really liked the chapter of this, or the title of this chapter, and then how the comparison between Wen and Andy is drawn, and how we've seen, Stone Eye's homosexuality compared before, but this direct comparison and acknowledgement that Wen and Andon are bonded in this way, despite not really having any bond at all.
Yeah, I really like that too, and this was like such an odd pair to see meeting up and hanging out. I was like, it was unexpected, but cool.
Hasn't Andon been pretty explicit about feeling like he hasn't been treated like he's unlucky because of his homosexuality within his family?
Well, not just that, it's also his parents. People pulled their ears behind him.
There is the Hilo. I think there's like a knowledge that Hilo didn't judge him because of that, but also he was embarrassed about it a little in the first book. And then here, I think there's the discussion that he had never talked about this sort of thing with anyone really. So much of Andon's relationship with himself and his place in Takon and his place with the Calls. It's very messy and murky.
That's true.
Aaron, you touched on already, you thought Wen was being very judgy this chapter. And there is that whole, her opinion on Andon, how it's changed a little bit. Is there anything left on the bone for you there?
No, it's just, I don't know. You'd think Wen would be more like Shay and like more empathetic to, different paths in life. But I think Wen is just Team Hilo all the way. So it's probably hard for her to sympathize with Andon's side, especially because she's a Stone Eye and Andon has this opportunity to help the clan by wearing Jade, and I feel like all Wen cares about is helping Hilo and the clan. So I think she probably looks down on Andon for turning his back on his family in that way.
Similar to how she was sort of hesitant to trust Shay again early on.
Yeah, Wen's a believer. He's all in on the clan.
I guess I kind of did take it as her being Team Hilo, but I took it more as like, this is why they work so well together and why they're such a strong pair, because they have all these similarities like that. But they're just so devoted to the clan, I guess, and like everything's personal in a way.
Mm-hmm. Good call out.
Wen's appreciation of clan life is just very different in general, and I think like we've talked often about the way that like Hilo views Wen and like is enforcing his own personality in terms of the relationship and what she's capable of. At the same time, she thinks about some of those things that she was responsible for and then also exceeds those capabilities in ways that she thinks she can, but she's still just operating within the framework of the clan, not necessarily breaking the same boundaries that Andon is sort of, I don't know, not necessarily maybe pushing against, but contributing again, like beginning to nudge against to some degree. Yeah. It's tough to parse perfectly at this point. Did that track? So I just...
I think so.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, I did.
Did the comparison Lon and Andin stick out to anybody else? Specifically, like she says he looked more like Lon than Shay or Hilo ever did, despite not being a call.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if it's more of like a general vibe or actual physical look.
Maybe because they're both so uptight.
Yeah, that's how I took it. Like the sad
They're just
boy,
like
uptight
solemn,
energy
yeah.
rolled on their shoulders.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But there's also a confidence to it. Like he's, or rather a lack of confidence to it, where Lon was pretty regularly questioning his position and all of the like circumstances that piled against him, like his sleeplessness and things like that. Whereas, but he had to put on that strong face. And now Andin is in this position where he's working for the weatherman's office. We haven't gotten to that part yet where it explains it, but he's already there at this point, I think.
Yes.
And he's just kind of in this, I don't know if I deserve to be here, but I have to be here, and I'm doing the best I can and fill in the gaps that seem to fit my skill set kind of deal. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense, I think. One last thing here, and then I realized I skipped over. The layout was flipped in my head of this chapter, so I skipped over something. But I thought it was interesting how in Jade City we get Hilo being like, you saved my life, I'll never forget, you did a great favor to the clan, I'll never forget that as long as I live. And then half hour later, never want to see you again, you're expelled from the clan. And then here, so it's she'd always be grateful for the part he played in killing Gaunt Ash and saving the clan as well as her husband's life. But then he turned his back on the family and left, just like Shay once had. But it's just like that, always be thankful, but immediately again. And that was, I think, why I was so keyed up to be like, oh yeah, her and Hilo, so similar.
Wynn's definitely about the business.
Yeah. I don't think it's a fair comparison either, though, because Shay actually actively decided to leave, and Andin wanted to work for the clan just without being the green bone, without wearing Jade, but was exiled out of the country, not by his own accord. So there's some pretty stark differences there, and saying that's just like Shay abandoning the family. Like there's some arguments that can be made, like his decision to not wear Jade could be what she's talking about, but I don't know. I think it's a pretty false comparison in my head.
I think that's a more rational read than Wen and Hilo have on it for sure.
Mm-hmm. True.
Then, of course, there is the reason Wen is in Espenia to begin with, to distribute Jade to the allies of No Peak. There's not like an official clan name for these guys, right? They just call Doubt Losinian the Pillar of South Trap, but they're not like the South Trappians.
That's as close as I could get. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, if I were going to name it South Trappians.
I would just be South.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about the Caspenians?
Well, I think it's...
It'd be a little bit more wide-reaching, but
I'd like to talk about when we get to one of the more famous Caspenians out there, the flitting butterfly himself. But what do we think about this distribution of Jade to the allies of No Peak?
What could go wrong?
A bad idea.
Yeah.
Why not?
Have some nukes.
I thought the way it was executed was pretty cool, though. Good job, Wen. Very crafty. She's got some big balls of Jade.
Badass spy. And then there's also the very funny, like, she's the only one that could handle this insane amount of Jade, apparently, and she just does it very casually, and no one else can even touch any of it, as long as all of it's like so close to one another. And then they're carrying it out in lead-lined boxes. She just breezes around with it.
She's wearing it all. Didn't they say it's like this approximately the same amount of Jade as like the entire Jade ceremony at the end of the academy?
Yes.
I think it was
graduation.
Half of it.
Half of the graduating class, but an entire Espenian Special Forces platoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think people are going to notice.
What could go wrong?
It may perhaps notice.
And then, like we already touched on, but I think it's worth shouting out again. Poor Wen, in addition to being a badass super spy, has a real job she's got to do. It's tough.
She's got to go review floor plans.
She's a hard worker.
You know what that's like.
I'm impressed by her.
Aaron, are you a spy?
I would have to kill you if I told you.
Sounds like something
I feel like that's confirmation.
I know.
That's, yeah, I think you told us without telling us, which also
well,
is good. Because then you don't have to kill us.
Just the listeners.
I'm pro that. Cool. Chapter 52. This is serious. We return to Andy, having moved out of the Heon's place and into his own, as his work has begun with the KCON Trade Partnership Liaison Office. We get a picture of the fallout of Chapter 44 as the crews have broken out into a full-on street war, resulting in the arrest of Boss Cromner. Cordy returns home from law school, which is its own fun fact. And then later, Andon receives a call from the Triumvirate leading the clan, needing his help to kill a man. There is so much that happens in the space of like 10 pages here. And I love it. And this shows that Andon is making big moves. Maybe not himself. He's being made a part of big moves, perhaps, and helping out Hami in a big way, in the way that he initially like onboards some of the families and brings them in, he sources the people, but at the same time is not trying to be, a spy for the calls.
I mean, but he kind of is.
He is naturally, but I don't think that he actually is. You know what I mean? Like it's not the part he's trying to play. He's trying to be helpful first.
Right, but that's kind of the only thing he can do. He sucks at math, and like he's there by obligation.
I would disagree, PJ. I think he's doing a lot. He's kind of like a fixer almost. He's just
he's owning this job.
Giving me Wound Poppy vibes.
Yeah. Wound Poppy, that's actually a pretty good comparison.
Yeah, because they specifically say
it's an honorary,
exceptionally smart, but he just gets shit done.
Finding all the information on the Espenian military personnel that raped that girl and is getting their due.
That is definitely a component here as well, is like the sort of we talked this is an interesting extension of sort of the Marrow conversation. We see foreign clan justice enacted. It took a longer time than it may have to, like, for instance, extract Marrow's family, but it still happened, which is to say that it's not impossible and that they can reach far when they need to. They just need some roots, and to be fair, they maybe don't have the Shatarian roots that they need to make that move on behalf of the kids, but still, it could happen. Could have, if you would have asked, if you would have been part of the family.
Yeah, I think for that specifically, I feel like, I don't know if anyone would like the solution, but I feel like at the very least, Hilo would have offered to, like, marry Marrow. We'll bring his family here. We'll protect them on the Call estate.
Right. Yeah.
Like, there was a
would have been another thing. Yeah. But this specifically, the moment in which the sort of justice is enacted for the soldiers' violence on Yuman Island, I think, calls that out. Yeah. Beyond that, we obviously talked about the fact that he's not necessarily a spy, but is, just by the nature of being a call. I think that there's no part of Andon that would sell Hami out unless it were something egregious. It feels very much like a helpful thing, wherein Hami instead feels very paranoid about it. But I don't think that's really the intent. I don't think that anyone is intending for Hami to feel paranoid.
I misunderstood what you meant. I meant he's going in, like, recon missions and, like, spying.
No.
Within the community. Not on
Hami.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Not on Hami. Yes.
Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah. It's not a psyop on Hami. Yeah, that was my point.
I think Kami's right to know that a call is there.
Mhm.
So he can't do
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
totally obvious.
There's that smallest bit of pressure for sure. So then we kind of get into a phone call and a conversation with Corey about sort of his party boy nature while he's been at college and sort of that display, but also his sort of moral philosophy on things. What do we think of his opinion on living on KCON and his, college, not playboy necessarily, but I don't know. He's just going to college. He's doing the thing. What do we think?
The Topper's experience.
Toppers, bro.
I can't do the toppers.
Oh my god.
I don't love any of the Aspenian slain. I don't like that he still calls them crumb. I don't like toppers.
Toppers is bad.
Toppers is weird.
It's
It
weird.
just seems sexual, which would make sense. Like if it was used in a sexual nature, I think I'd like it more. But it seems
it sounds
sexual
like
and it's not
poppers.
used that way.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm
just think
like,
of the fucking pizza chain.
I think
Very
Corey
Midwest.
is very
Is it?
unserious, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've never been to a foreign country. That sounds exotic.
Oh my
That sounds
God.
fun. Let's go party on the beach in KCON." And Annan's like, "No, dude. Like, you'd probably get murdered. You'd
Yeah.
have to like love me."
He did seem to take it as like a vacation, not as a like we're moving here.
Or
of
understand
deal.
like what wearing jade on KCON means.
Mhm.
But like, how could he? At the
True.
same time.
Yeah, I'm not expecting it. I'm just like, that's part of his frivolity.
I think he could understand if
party
he
boy
like
nature.
paid attention to his dad or Roan or anyone
Mhm.
who's very serious about Jade.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he's
he
his
could have a
dad's
better idea.
got a pretty good like viewpoint of Corey as he is. I feel like his dad's got him kind of pegged. Like,
Truly, especially when we get into 53, of course. Like, it's very clear that his dad has him pegged, might not be the best word.
Figured
I know. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm not gonna say it.
Oh, no, I got you. Yeah. I appreciate that sentiment because it does feel like Corey, in part, in the same way that Andon has the rebellious emo teen sort of nature to him, even though he's in his 20s now, Corey has the sort of party boy, like, I don't need to respect my parents for different reasons or like where they come from. And there's an interesting conflux of emotional and moral reactions to the idea of like going to KCON, where it's like, is it a vacation or is it super serious? And that's a relationship boundary that obviously is a problem, as has been brought up before. So this chapter also highlights something that I love, which is the way that the war is brought into the foreground very casually via the TV, via radio calls and other things like that. We find out that there's pressure for the Aspenians to withdraw from the war in Orticon based on a number of different factors. We kind of get like our updates piecemeal from TV and from other small things that makes this story really make it clear to you that the focus is on the individuals that are here, not the bigger sort of political Mako picture. We're always trying to make it work in a small lens and a big lens at the same time.
Yeah, it was kind of nice to get the snippets of newsreel.
Yeah, time's progressed. Everything's moved. Of course, the war's changed.
mm-hmm.
So we
Do you
move
think-
to the final moment. Oh, go ahead.
Do you think that in Aspenia they call Ketanese food freedom food now because they're mad they won't help out more in the war?
Lord.
Yes.
French.
I hope so.
It's,
Absolutely.
How very...
I am not one for headcanon most times, but that is my new headcanon.
Definitely seems like something Aspenia would be into.
Love it. You're totally right. It does. It shares the same sort of thing, same sort of environment, the vibes. So to round out the chapter, we get the call from the calls and a man's death on the other end of the line. And this is this whole thing of, hey, Andon, we know you really haven't been a part of the clan, like proper. You haven't been a part of the scheme, so to speak. We brought you in slowly and gradually. You don't have to wear Jade. But unfortunately, we're going to need you to like take part in this next death. Again, books and climaxes. We compared this to Jade City. We don't even know the outcome of this, but it feels like we're getting shoveled back in to an Ash situation. What do you think?
This is even more explicit, though. Here, we didn't even really know what Andon was up to with the Ash situation.
I like that it's like a Zoom call with your 3 bosses.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, they've never all called me before.
And we need you to kill a guy.
Yeah, it was funny. Like, hey, Andy, you're on with the Weatherman and the Horn and Hilo.
And Hilo.
Okay.
Like, fuck, what'd I do now? Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons Andon doesn't want to wear Jade is he doesn't want to be a killer. So he also doesn't want to go insane and have the itches. But now they're asking him to be a killer again.
Or at the very least, contribute.
You said you want to be part of the clan.
Accessory.
Mm-hmm.
And it went through the progression of like, inform on these guys and they'll see some pretty violent, not deaths, but outcomes. And then,
well,
what's the step up from there, you know?
Andon earlier in the book does tell Corey that it's not that he didn't want to be a killer, he didn't want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So that's why he doesn't want to wear the jade. So I think this is within his moral compass. I think he's fine with this.
I think so too.
It's fair.
I think his primary aversion is becoming obsessed and following in his mother's footsteps.
To that point, if the car had exploded with Gwen and the kids in it, do you think that would have been enough for him to put on Jade again? And counterpoint, or follow-up, do you think Hilo would have allowed him not to wear Jade if his wife and children had been murdered?
I don't know if Andon's close enough. He hasn't even met his nephews or niece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't see that inspiring him to wear Jade.
No, but I could see a straight up ultimatum coming from Hilo.
I just see
That'd be
Hilo
a lot more
full,
difficult to.
Yeah, he's like
Hilo would go get himself killed over that. Yeah.
Okay.
Even Tar right now is bad. Imagine Hilo under the circumstances.
Yeah. I feel like Hilo might try to just put on all the Jade he can and go out swinging.
That's what I'm saying. He's
the whole
gonna die pretty quickly after
I'll
that.
put on all of the Jade in our treasury. Bang, bang, bang.
Scarface it.
For sure.
That brings us to our last chapter of the week. Chapter 53, Sins and Compromises. We learn that No Peak finally has a chance to strike at Sapunyo directly, and Andon, acting as an emissary between the two clans, goes to Doubt Losinyan and Doubt Sana to ask for the aid of Lone Toru in carrying out the killing. Doubt Losinyan asks his wife to leave and has a heart-to-heart with Andon, telling him how he came to be the Pillar of Southtrap, the origin of his bond with Roan, and ultimately asking Andon to break up with Corey in exchange for this favor. The next day, Andon breaks up with Corey over the phone, wanders about in the rain, and phones his cousins to let them know he had secured Doubt Losinyan's aid in killing Sapunyo. Heavy chapter, I would say.
Yeah, a little bit.
So, if anything,
I feel like I should have seen it coming a little bit more of how negatively Corey's father looked upon his homosexuality and
bisexuality, but that part of that,
yeah. Like in retrospect, how cagey he was about like answering questions about what his parents would think and things like that. It makes sense, but I had just gotten lulled into a sense of security, like, yeah, things are a little bit more progressive than they're being like presented, and maybe they don't have to worry about their.
I thought the worst part of the story was Doubt saying that Corey's basically their curse. Like they waited so long to have a son, and then he's like a waste of space. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It seemed almost like who Corey is the disappointment, and then adding to that is his bisexuality, I guess.
I think too it goes down to he's our only son, so he has to, and he's the only one who wears.
Traditional viewpoint.
He's the only one who wears Jade, so he needs to have kids and pass his Jade down. Yeah, that's kind of how I saw it.
I didn't see it necessarily so I was majorly homophobic, I guess, but I may be giving Dauk the benefit of the doubt on that.
The phrase was literally, he needs to stop messing around with men.
What was that, PJ?
What he said was he needs to stop messing around with men.
Yeah.
As the crux of the argument.
Right. I guess I didn't see that as the crux of the argument. I just saw that kind of as a thing that was mentioned along with
during.
Yeah. And I think the thing that he has the most issue with is just kind of the lack of direction and just kind of the frivolous nature of Corey's life, and that he's a party boy and that he's just kind of a chill bro,
Tappers.
Do you think that if Corey was more serious and maybe exclusively into men, his father would be more understanding of it?
I think possibly. I do think that's maybe I think that is a piece of it for sure, probably.
But I do think he wants him to have children.
Right.
So,
right.
I think
because he's the only green one. If his daughters were wearing green, maybe it wouldn't put so much pressure on Corey to be the one to pass on the Kekanese Jade.
I mean, he's obviously asking Andon to break up with Corey for a reason, and presumably that is that Corey, at least in his own way, is taking this relationship seriously.
I think that if he was more green and pursuing, a role within, I don't know, the clan or whatever, not the clan, but just kind of doing what his dad wants, I think he'd have a better chance of being able, his dad would be more understanding of his relationship with another man. But I think that he's still an old-fashioned mindset, and that he was going to want kids and grandkids. I mean, he's going to want them to have kids and grandkids and that kind of thing.
I think PJ, this was your point, that did you say you were lulled into thinking that the world and Dauk were more progressive than it turns out that they were?
Yeah.
So I think Corey, to an extent, was also sort of that, unless that's just how he was selling it to Andon, because he keeps saying as long as I wear Jade, I can get away with anything.
Yeah, but it was in retrospect, I think that feels like deflection and not
steal.
I was just about to make that joke. It feels like a way of shifting the conversation away from their relationship and towards literally anything else.
Okay, that makes sense. Steering us back to the setup of that, and unless the first thing that jumped out to me was just Dauk Loson's story and the decision to have his wife leave for the first time, as Andon calls out. And there's the setup of, Andon won't compromise on putting Jade back on, because obviously Dauk knows he has been trained to wear Jade and hasn't put it on. And Dauk's I mean, you could, if this is so important, you could put on Jade and kill this guy, right? And he's that's the one thing I can't compromise on. So it sets up the story of the one thing Dauk can't compromise on. But what do we think of this origin story for our guy, the Pillar of South Trap?
It's pretty dark.
Fair.
Pretty heavy.
It's not very epic. It's kind of a sad way to power.
I know, it was sad and dark and just god damn. And to be living with that whole time, that really informs his character a lot. And it's just wow, that guy's hiding a lot of pain. And
it also shows why Roan isn't a good father, because he has to dedicate his whole life to serving Dauk, who saved his life.
Once, like 50 years ago. Like, my guy, let it go.
I told you it was a Chewbacca life debt situation.
That's
You literally made that call, and
No.
both Thomas and I flinched, and then we tried to like not react.
That's why I
More
just
than
hide
that.
here so I can do my little mouth gestures.
We had a moment.
Yeah, we looked at each other deeply into each other's eyes. Does he know?
I know a Chewbacca life debt when I see one, that's for sure.
I'm not sure what to make of Sana being
They're best friends.
excluded from this conversation. If she knows the extent of it or knows vaguely what happened, but doesn't know the specifics.
Seemed to me that move was based in he doesn't want her to hear this story. But I don't know.
Yeah, but she
seemed to
nodded
know.
knowingly.
That's true. Like he didn't want her to like relive it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I
Or
thought it
or
was
if she
more
just
to do with
knows
the Corey
vague parts
part
of
of
it.
it.
Mm,
That could be too.
yeah. That's a good point.
I feel like she knows everything though. It's like Dauk's like, let me get one-on-one with this kid. Put the pressure on.
So,
Yeah.
in my notes, it took me a second to cobble together the thoughts I had at the time when I wrote it. And we already touched on this a little bit, trying to interrogate whether we thought Doubt's motivations were pure bigotry, whether there was something else behind it. And so I have a quote on in the ebook 506 to 507 that I think kind of colors things a little bit for me on how this goes. And so I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's pretty long. It's in the middle of a quote from Dauk Losen Yin, and it is right after. Okay. I've been indulgent of him, but he needs to stop fooling around with men and take his responsibilities seriously, which is already been touched on here. He's the only greenbone out of all four of my children, as undeserving and ignorant as he might be of what it truly means to wear jade and how important it is to our family's identity. He's not green enough for the old country, but that doesn't matter. He can still have a good Espenian life, a career that puts that expensive luxury to use. Children someday, if the gods are kind to us. He's not for you. You are sure to return to Janloon eventually, but his place is here. And so I kind of took that as him seeing Andon as a threat to kind of take his son away from him, take him to Janloon where he'll get killed. And so I saw it, in addition to everything else, as maybe there's an element of him being a protective father in this moment as well.
But protective of his son or protective of his bloodline and legacy?
I think a little of both.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a little of both. Like, I don't think that he
Maybe
wants
more
Corey
than the other.
getting like. He wants him to be green, and he wants him, but like in the Espenian way. Like, I don't think he wants him to be like on K-Con being a gangster. And so I think like
Dauk and Hilo agree that Corey is not green enough. He doesn't have thick blood.
No, he'd go to K-Con and flirt with somebody's girlfriend or boyfriend immediately,
yeah,
and then dead.
Get challenged to it.
Because he tried to
Clean blade
make
duel.
a joke about being toppers, and they'd be like, what do you mean by toppers? And he'd call someone a crumb, and they'd be like, oh my god, this guy's dead immediately.
Toast.
So yeah, I agree. There's an element of protection there as well.
And then that little tense, very tense exchange ends with Andon being like, hey man, can't make any promises now. Let me get back to you. Flash forward, calls Corey. A girl answers the phone. They have private talk in Cantonese. Bam, broken up with over the phone. Bells for Corey, I guess. Tough. So you're broken up with over the phone. Could not be me.
Yikes,
No,
Corey.
it feels bad for Corey. Being broken up on the phone.
I don't feel bad for Corey. He's a playboy.
Yeah, it might have been cheating again.
I thought he disclosed way too much information. You could just say, yeah, you're fooling around. You don't have to like go into detail.
Yeah, it felt like
One time.
more like giving up too much information to sell a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remind me of like when NBA players hit one another and then they're trying to sell that it was an accident by purposefully not looking. And it's like, if you hit somebody as hard as you did, and like you would look if it was an accident because you wouldn't be expecting it. You know what I mean? And it's sort of like that same oversell, making it more obviously fake.
Yeah, this could be why I'm a bad read of character. Got it. Keeping that in the back of my mind. Just kidding. that was a bit. God damn it.
But I think this section, specifically after he dumps Corey and then runs out into the rain once again.
So
and
emo.
Then calls his family. I think this is the saddest and like most heartbroken I've been for Andon. Most I felt for him.
Sort of genuinely, yeah.
I was just surprised that he broke Corey's heart and Corey didn't break his.
Yeah, you take a drink. You thought Corey would be the heartbreaker.
Sure, 100%.
Heartbreaker.
I totally thought so too.
I was like, good for you, Andon.
Corey is kind of the heartbreaker, though. He's sucking and fucking at law school.
Basically was already like, I'm fucking around on you.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah, but it's not serious.
Yeah,
so
we know Andon's hot, so he will be fine.
PG-13.
I don't think it is PG-13.
I mean, the episode.
The
episode is
highly
We've been
explicit.
so on the rails. We're responsible as hell.
I blame most of the tea. Just fully reasonable.
Did anybody notice any potential parallels between how this ends and how another section of Andon's life ends?
Did he run away in the rain when Hilo yelled at him?
He did. And there's that same kind of numbness, not realizing what he was doing, wandering for hours and hours.
He's a feeler.
I've got a breakup ritual, I don't know. Does anyone else? I think Andon does too. I think Andon's found his. It's the rain.
And then he had the bad luck of being in Espenia, so the rain's actually cold here.
Right.
I definitely have a sad boy
bummer.
routine.
Feet in the water.
I've never been broken up with.
We did it.
Tragic.
I married my only boyfriend. So
Oh, okay.
My sister too. I understand.
I married your sister.
Not all of us are. Oh, Piper.
I definitely have a sad boy ritual. I mean, it's been a while since I experienced a breakup, but so I don't really remember how I reacted. But
was it raining? Did you run around in the rain?
We'll tell you, I got broken up with many a time, and I just have many a dramatic sad boy reaction to them.
Running around in the rain.
I'm not sure. I don't like rain, but more like spending time alone. Yeah, eating pizza.
Pizza's good for happy or sad.
Usually eating like an entire pizza. Yeah.
I like that.
Is
quote,
it worth the can you even hear me? That's the last time I'll sing, I promise. It makes me cough, so I need to stop.
Pizza is good for happy or sad, I think
it's
a good tattoo.
Great way to end it.
Put it on a shirt.
Yeah.
Print it on the shirt, kid. But yeah. It's just, Andon, his first relationship, his first sort of love, closest he's been to love at least, ending, and then he's through his own fortune, like good fortune. He's not living with the Hyans anymore. He's on his own, and he's just in this moment, soaking his feet after wandering around in the freezing rain for hours. Knows his family back home is like celebrating. It's beautiful. Kakon's warm, and he's just alone, calling to be like, Dowd Losinian will do what you want. And they have no idea what he had to sacrifice. And it's just so heartbreaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, Corey it's not going to last. So better to rip the Band-Aid off.
True.
Mm-hmm.
No debate there. All right. Bring us to the end?
Yeah.
All right. With that, closing thoughts. Who won the week? Who won our week? Come on.
I don't know, man.
I think like
when?
I think it was Win again.
How did she win? Her fucking brother got exploded, though.
No, but she smuggled all that jade. That was tight.
She pulled Shay out of her bedroom
Is this like who we rocked with the most this week, or is it on like textually who did the best? I forget.
Whatever you like.
Yeah, I
man.
think it's your own criteria.
I think Wen then, because she held herself together like a champ. She encouraged Bloodbath. Loved that for her. She did cool spy shit.
She saved the
That's
kids
payback.
She
Yeah,
did cool. She
Shay
did
got her
cool
groove
design
back
shit.
again.
Oh man. Yeah.
I'm having a hard time
I
thinking of
was
a
gonna
case
say-
for anybody else.
Right. I was going to say Shay.
Zapunio?
I was going to say Shay for meta reasons. Like Shay gained a lot from this week. Ultimately, like she regained some confidence from the clan side of things, not herself. Obviously, she fails in a lot of ways, but I think that at the same time she's owning her mistakes and decisions, and also is coming to understand her place in things. She's owned that she's a greenbone now. I think to some regard, and that's a part of her life by base. So. But my first pick would also be Wen. What I was saying is that I would choose Wen. But if I had to choose
Devil's
anyone else,
advocate.
Shay is my second place.
I don't know. To quote somebody that I don't recall from The Sopranos, my opinion is of her fucking plummeted. Not really, but here's another wild card. Shout out is Juen. Promoted. Good for him.
Showed up.
Crushed it
to some degree.
Made good networks with the Weatherman, fostering the good relations once again. His boss is like tactical genius. Good look for our guy. Didn't get murdered by now Sue.
We could say Hilo won because he's like,
I don't think so, but maybe.
he's good in the public's eyes because he's defending his own and people see him as honorable in the media.
Mostly lived. Juice boxes.
PJ and Aaron, I didn't get your specific choices. Ben is full in on Wen.
I said
like.
Wen.
I was also.
I think everyone
Wen.
did.
Okay, we're all Wen except for okay. Got it. Cool. You
Everyone loves Wen.
just want to double check. No, it's fine.
She also got the most coverage on like the most different plot lines throughout this story. Like she was there with Shay, she was there with Hilo, she was there
with Tar,
Andon.
with Ken.
Yeah.
With the car.
Yeah. In Memoriam, Ken. We hardly knew you. You never got to meet your baby. It's tough. There's a loyal horn, a loving brother, and a wonderful uncle.
Here.
He tried.
Rip in peace, my friend.
Rip in peace. Next week is our final episode of Jade War, where we'll be reading the third interlude through the end. So, reading the final part of this book all in one chunk here to wrap it up. And I'm so excited to finish this and to get into that. So, that's where we'll leave you for this week.
Thank you, as ever, to the wonderful producers of Atomic Pylon, Tim and Andrew, for helping my fine friends here keep their shows going. Also, be sure, there's links in the show notes. I don't know if anyone's aware of this. Check those out because they're not just there for no reason. They actually have a schedule, Patreon, previous episodes, websites, and social media links all in one convenient spot. And that's pretty fucking cool, rad, and dope.
And it's not just for us. It's for Howler Pod. It's for High Key Obsessed. They're on each of the episodes, of course. We were so appreciative of you guys being on the show. You can find Words and Whiskey Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Words Whiskey Pod, Words and Whiskey Show at gmail.com. If you want to send us any questions or thoughts, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Dear God, we know that there are so many of you that listen to this, and we only have like 70 or 80 reviews. And I can count the numbers.
5 stars only. If you don't give us 5 stars only, then I guess we'll blow your car up.
Allegedly.
For legal reasons, we will blow your car up, but it is not our fault for blowing your car up. It is your own fault because you didn't leave a review. 5 stars only. Other than that, you can find our t-shirts on TeePublic. With that, we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Love you.